Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Life. Whoa, where's this going? That's an interesting topic, isn't it? Life. Where do we begin? Where do we end? We could talk about it all day long. And you all have plenty of experience. So not just sit there, listen to me talk about life, but rather to switch places and talk about life. You sat here. Life. See, the more you cultivate your mind, the more you develop your mind, the more you follow this path and practice the Buddha's teaching, the more you begin to realize that the problem has always been with yourself. It was never out there. Not one tiny bit. You begin to understand that the world that's out there was never constructed to actually bring you suffering. The external world has not been constructed to bring you suffering. Because if that were the case, then there wouldn't be any deliverance for any of us. If the outside world, if the external world was constructed, was formulated to bring us suffering, then there'd not be any recluse for any of us. The world out there is very innocent. It is not the reason that we suffer. We and we alone are the cause of our suffering. That's how life works. Life was not designed to cause us suffering. Life was designed to teach us about suffering, but not to bring us suffering. We bring suffering upon ourselves. And I want you all to have that realization. The more you realize this, the more free and the more happy you can be. Having understood and fully comprehended that you are your own savior, the salvation lay within yourselves. You are free to free yourselves. No one's holding you back. No one causes you suffering. No one brings suffering to you. We do it to ourselves. This is self-torture. These flowers, there's nothing about these flowers that compels us to attach ourselves to it. Don't worry, I'll explain. There's nothing inherently about these flowers that compels us to attach ourselves to it. Yes, we do attach ourselves to the flowers, but the flowers aren't responsible for that. I never got an invitation card from a bunch of flowers saying, "Hey, I'm here, please attach yourself to me." Did any of you get an invitation card? No? These flowers are innocent. They are not here to cause us suffering. In fact, they're all here to make our lives easy, to live. They're all here to help us. The sun is here to help us. It serves its purpose, makes life easier for us. Would you want a world with no sun? Would you? No. The sun is not the reason you're here. Now that you are here, the sun is here to help you. The sun is not the reason you're here. The moon and the stars and the great oceans and the birds and the bees, these flowers, none of these things invited you to come here. You came here out of your own will. It was simply your choice, 100% it was your choice, out of your own free will, that you chose to come into being, into existence, into samsara. None of these things are responsible for that. See, the more you understand this, the more you can learn to be at peace with the world. What I'm trying to explain can be a little bit subtle, but bear with me. And try and contemplate on what it is I'm trying to explain to you. Focus and reflect on what it is I'm saying. You will understand, if you haven't already. None of these things are the cause of our suffering. People have a wrong view that the external world brings us suffering. That's all it is. It's a wrong view. That suffering is not real. Except for, of course, physical suffering. But even that you can tie back to the suffering that we inflict on ourselves. So one could say, well, it's raining, Swaminatha, so then I get wet. Surely, it's the rain that's responsible for making me wet. Okay, I understand. But weren't you there in the first place to get wet? If you weren't there in the first place, now it doesn't matter how much it rains. You're not going to get wet. Someone steps on your toe. Someone tramples over you, right? You say, well, it's their fault. Why did they trample on my feet? Hang on. Why was your foot there in the first place? If your foot wasn't there in the first place, now they would not have been able to walk over you. So why was your foot there in the first place? Because you needed a foot. Why did you need a foot? Because you needed a body, right? Why did you need a body? Because you need this physical body to maintain and sustain your eyes, ears, nose, tongue. And why do you need them? Because you like your sights and sounds and smells and taste and touch. And that's why you came into this world. So that is why you have a foot. That is why your foot was there in the first place, which someone else walked over. So you see, again, if you think it through, it's not their fault that your foot got trampled over. Why was your foot there in the first place? So it's not your fault that you get wet when you go outside in the rain, is it? Is it? Is it the rain's fault that you get wet when you go out when it's raining? No. Why were you there? Why did you go out? If you didn't expose yourself to the rain, you wouldn't have gotten wet. If you didn't have a body, then you wouldn't have gotten wet. Why did you have a body? It goes back. Like the matta on the balla. Like the flea on the dog, right? You know the story? Everyone knows the story. Yeah. So we need to be able to link it back, folks. Back to us. We need to bring it back home. To put it really simply, bring it back home. That's your karma sthan for today. Bring it back home. Whenever there's a problem, bring it back home. Because the way the world is, it's perfect the way it is. You'll have heard in Guru Swaminatha's sermons, Tiyana Vidiha, Anama Vidiha. The way it is, it's perfect the way it is. It's perfect. If it's raining out there right now, oh, it's perfect the way it is. The rain is here to help us. It's not here to bring us suffering. The reason you're suffering is because you're getting wet, but the reason you're getting wet is not because it's raining. It's because you're out there when it's raining. That's why you're suffering. People talk about climate change. Right, so they have symposiums, right? Conferences annually, globally. They have conferences for all sorts of things. The top thinkers of the world, they get together. All the world's great leaders and the United Nations and all these fantastic organizations, they get together and they talk about global problems, climate change. So let's find out. We're here to address climate change. How about that? For a change. We're here to talk about climate change today. That's the agenda. So climate change is a problem, isn't it? Climate change is not a problem? Of course, it's a problem. Yes. Well, otherwise you'd be suggesting that people are wasting their time in these conference halls, getting together, spending a lot of money, flying people from all over the world, and don't talk about all the carbon emissions when they fly people from all over the world to come to one place. The irony of it. Well, let's not talk about that. It's a sensitive topic. But let's talk about climate change though. So climate change is a problem. Yeah, you get that. So if climate change is a problem, how do we deal with this problem? How do conventional men and women deal with this problem? Conventional people, how do they deal with this problem? They look outside. You can look out the window. It's getting very foggy. There's a lot of pollutants in the air. Let's try and fix this problem. So they start to deal with climate change. But I'm saying, bring it home. Bring the problem of climate change home. Climate change is affecting you because you're here to be affected by it. Your grandfather passed away 5 years ago. Does climate change affect him? No, because he ain't here. Your great-grandfather passed away 20 years ago. Doesn't bother him one bit. When was the last time you got a postcard from your great-grandfather saying, oh, climate change is affecting us here as well? I'm not talking about he passed away, then he's born again as a human being, so he's somewhere right now and he's also being affected by climate change. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm just talking about, if you don't need to take it that far. Now just imagine that life ends after death. Okay? Just make that assumption. There's no rebirth. So life ends after death. Now climate change doesn't affect anyone who died. Anyone who's dead, climate change does not impact. There's a food shortage. There's a food shortage, isn't there? People are talking about that. There's not enough food for everyone, apparently. Child abuse is a problem. Violence is a problem. Drugs is a problem. These are global problems. Poverty is a problem. Problems. People have problems. But there's something very common between all of these problems. And what's common is these problems affect people who are here. It doesn't affect people who are not here. These problems only affect people who are in this world, who live, who exist. So food shortage is not going to be a problem for someone who's not here. If you didn't have a stomach, you wouldn't be hungry. Therefore, if you didn't have a stomach, food shortage isn't going to be a problem for you. But, of course, you have a stomach because you have a body that needs to be fed. You have a body that needs to be fed because your body is your housing for your eyes and ears and your nose and your tongue, again we are going back to the Mecca. Why? This is how we bring it home. We need to learn to bring problems home. Bring it back home. All problems, bring them back home. You see, when you learn to do this, it becomes so easy to deal with problems. I can only assume that there'll be people among you, probably most of us. I can't imagine someone except an arahant. People have problems. And there'll be times in your life when you get stressed out, when you become anxious, when you start to worry, when fear creeps into your mind, right? I want you all to be able to bring the problem back home. Bring it back home. Because when you learn to bring it back home, you feel empowered, not helpless. Why do people go picketing? Why do people go on strike? They pick up placards and then they walk all over town, round Lipton Hall, protesting. We want our rights. We want higher pay. We want a better pension. No? Want. I mean, they're clever. You've got to give them that, because they've got the problem written all over the board. Haven't they? We want higher pay. This is my problem. So they go out on the streets yelling at the top of their voices about their problem. We want equal rights. Good. Excellent. You've identified the problem. Fantastic. They don't expect us to do anything. All we need to do is just sympathize. Because what they're doing is they're walking around town with these placards saying, we have identified the problem. This is my problem. I want equal rights. That is my problem. So don't feel that they're asking of you to do anything. These are not demands. It would be wrong of us to think that they're demands. They're just saying, I have a problem. I know it. I just want to share my problem with you. If only, eh? If only they realize that the problem is exactly what it is on the board. See, once someone realizes that the problem is with wanting, why would they go and protest? Why would they go to, lawsuits? Why would they go and take on legal battles? Why do we have a court system in the first place? This is how society has come up with ways to help people get along with each other. What is getting along with each other after all? I want something from you. You give it to me. You need something from me, and I'll give it to you. This is what getting along with each other means. For as long as you want something, you will need the help of others. Therefore, you will always be dependent. Only someone who has given up all wanting, who has relinquished all desires, all wanting, is someone who is truly independent. I have made it the purpose of my life to become independent. I don't think I got anything on the 4th of February, 1948. I was the same man. Day before and day after, the 3rd of February 1948, I was the same man. The 4th, I was the same man on the 5th. Mind you, I wasn't on this planet. I was probably somewhere else, but I was the same person. I wasn't any different. Sri Lanka got independence, but didn't make any difference to me. I still wanted independence, even after I had gotten it. This is why, if there's something that happens out there that threatens the independence of this country, now that starts to trouble me, starts to worry me. If you get to hear any news briefings or any newspaper sightings of the LTTE resurfacing, does that not bring at least a tiny bit of fear back into your hearts, into your minds, and worry? Because you feel your independence being threatened. But the truth of the matter is, the LTTE never took away your independence. They did nothing, because they can do nothing to take away your independence. As a matter of fact, they're innocent. You yourself relinquished, gave up your independence. You surrendered your independence. And you can regain it. No one's taken it from you. You've just given it up. You can take it back. And the only way to do that is to bring it back home. We'll talk about some examples. And I want all of you to be able to bring it back home. Think it through. When we go over various examples, bring it back home. This is all I'm asking you to do today. Just bring it back home. Because when you bring it back home, now you can start finding an eternal solution. Every other solution is very temporary. If you try to fix the world around you, all solutions are temporary. You will forever have to keep implementing those solutions. Forever. Let's take a really simple example. 27. This one's on 26. I have asked our monks not to set the air conditioners on two different temperatures because it's pointless. One heats the room up, the other cools the room down. Right? So let's use that as an example. I want them to set them on the same temperature. I don't care what the temperature is. I'm not talking about whether it's too hot or too cold, but the fact that they're set on two different temperatures is meaningless. The aircon is not running at optimal performance because one's heating the room up and the other's cooling the room down. What's the point? It's pointless to do that. You got to set it at the same temperature. It doesn't matter what the temperature is, but you got to set it at the same temperature. But no, see, that's what I want. So it makes sense to me. Therefore, when I speak to the people who arrange this room, I say, please make sure you set them to the same temperature. This is what I want them to do. I can't remember how many times I have said this. And yet today, they're set on two different temperatures. That's good. Perhaps they said it that way so that we can come up with an example. We need to learn to bring it back home. There's a problem, right? This is a problem. We need to learn to bring the problem back home. Right now the problem's out there. I asked you to do this because I want you to do this. I want you to set these air cons at the same temperature. I want you to do this. The problem's not back home yet. The problem's out there. So now I need to find solutions. If the problem's out there, I need to go speak to people to find solutions. I have to continue to talk to them. And it's non-stop. This is why I said this is probably the 10th time I have mentioned this. And yet today, I find these two air cons on two different temperatures. I don't expect that there ever will be a day when I don't have to say it. So it'll probably be fixed for next week. Oh, there's no sermon next week, by the way. But the week after, and maybe the week after, and maybe the week after, but a month's time from now, I will bet my top dollar these air cons will be on 2 different temperatures. Why is that? That's the way it is. Because I haven't brought the problem back home. I want someone else to do what I want. I want someone else to change. In other words, what I'm saying is, I don't like what you're doing, you change. See, I haven't brought the problem back home. To bring the problem back home is to understand that the problem was never out there. Now, this is only an example, of course, right? Even an arahant would point it out, by the way, simply because it's not efficient to have the air cons on 2 different temperatures. It's meaningless. So therefore, even an arahant would point it out. But this is just an example we're using here. So to drive the point home, what I need to learn to do then is to be able to accept that it's perfect the way it is. To do that, I need to be able to bring the problem home. I want them to be at the same temperature. This is the cause of my suffering. This is the cause of my suffering. So if I were to go on protest with a placard, what would I have written on it? I want the air cons on the same temperature. So in fact, if I were to see, let's imagine these monks, they don't listen to anything I say. So I have to take a letter of complaint to Guru Hamdru. I say, Guru Hamdru, see, these monks, I told you don't ordain these, right? And they don't listen to me. And so I say, I want them to set the room temperature. I want them to set the 2 air cons on the same temperature, but they never do it. This is my complaint letter. If I were to take this to Guru Hamdru, what's he going to say? He's going to say, oh, well done, Namadasana Hamdru. You have identified the problem. Now go work on it. Go fix it. Why? That's what my problem is on the letter. He's going to say, see, you've identified the problem. Well done, my boy. Now go work on it. Go work on it. He's not going to ask Dasahamdru to come and have a word with him. He's just going to say, you've identified the problem, now work on it. You want the 2 air cons to be on the same temperature. That is your problem. This is what bringing it home is all about. See, if I observe what is happening out there and I fail to bring the problem home, now my conception is that the problem's out there. So there are people out there who don't do what I want them to do. Do you think I will ever be at peace? How could I be? Because guess what? Next week I'm going to come in through this door and the first thing I'm going to have to do is what? Look up. And the following week, the same thing. And the following, the same thing. Because to get someone to do something I want them to do is an abhisankara. In other words, change the world to your liking. Not rid yourself of liking, but change the world to your liking. That is what abhisankara is, in really simple terms. Changing the world to your liking. The things that you do, the things that you say, and the thoughts that you have to change the world to your liking. This is what abhisankara is. Sabba sankaresu attiyati harayati jigucchati, the Buddha teaches us. Attiyati. This is like throwing the dog a bone. A bone which has no meat on it, no meat around it. And every bite this dog takes, the bone's going to start cracking and it's going to start pricking holes in this animal's mouth. It's going to start hurting the animal. And it's going to start bleeding. And then whenever it savors the taste, it's going to be the taste of its own blood. So with every chew it makes, it's hurting itself. See, I can never be at peace if I want the outside world to change to my liking, instead of working on myself by bringing the problem home. And let's see if you can bring the problem home. You come home after work, and it's a Tuesday, so every other day you have an arrangement at home. You have an arrangement at home whereby every other day you do the dishes, and alternating days your husband or your wife does the dishes. So you come home on a Tuesday. Tuesday is husband's day, not my day. Tuesday is husband's day. You come home and you find the dishes have not been done. What's the immediate and natural reaction? Anger. Annoyance. See, the moment you see that thing, you see what's going on there. The initial knee-jerk reaction to that is anger. It's almost automatic. It's almost automatic. It just comes so naturally. Anger comes so naturally. Annoyance and frustration comes so naturally. By the time you realize you're angry, you've been angry for about half a minute at least. By the time you realize it. When you practice bringing home the problem, when you practice bringing it home, the more you practice, the more you can reduce the time it takes between event and response. You can reduce the time between event and response. You can keep reducing it until your response now becomes defaulted to the problem is with me, not out there. And then at one point, there's no problem at all. So you keep reducing it until one day there's no problem at all. Because that day is a day whereby you have completely accepted that the problem is always with me. Having rid the mind of wanting. This may sound really simple. And that's because nirvana is simple. It's not complicated. I hope you haven't come here today to listen to something complicated and so convoluted that it baffles you and it gives you a headache for the rest of the week. I hope that's not what you have come here for. Nirvana is so simple. I didn't think it was. When I was a student of Nirvana, when I didn't even know what Nibbana was, the early days, I didn't think Nibbana was simple. I thought it was really difficult. I thought it was something that only the elite could understand. I thought it was something to understand which you needed to fulfill lots of paramita, and perhaps I hadn't fulfilled those paramita. I thought maybe I'm just not intelligent enough to understand it. And I thought it would require me to go and sit under a tree and focus on my breath for many hours and many days and many months and perhaps a few years at a stretch before I would understand what Nibbana is. Nibbana was a dream to me some time ago. It might have been for you as well. In fact, when someone says Nibbana, that would send a shiver down me. Don't talk to me about that. I'm just going to get a headache. But no, Nibbana is so simple. The true state of Nibbana you all have within you. This is why Nibbana is a discovery rather than an invention. You don't need to invent Nibbana. It's already within you. You just need to discover it. It's been covered up with the defilements. It's been covered up with the nivarna, the hindrances. All you need to do is remove the hindrances. Extract the hindrances and you will discover nirvana. Because you know what? The default state of our minds is happiness. We bring suffering upon ourselves. By default, we are engineered to be happy. We bring suffering upon ourselves. This is why, see, the Buddha talks about the noble truths, right? You all heard of that, the Four Noble Truths. He says the first noble truth is the noble truth of suffering. Then he says the second noble truth is the noble truth of the cause of suffering. And then he goes on to say that if you eradicate the cause of suffering, you will have eradicated suffering. And then he talks about the path to eradicating the cause of suffering. See, he speaks of eradication of suffering. He never talks about installing happiness, or bringing in, or importing, or bringing happiness from somewhere. All he talks about is to eradicate suffering. And the reason for that is happiness is already there. If happiness was something we would have to strive for, then the Four Noble Truths would be entirely different. Then he would have to talk about the first noble truth of happiness, the second noble truth of the cause of happiness, the third noble truth for the path to happiness, or rather the cessation of, no, not the cessation of, but rather the bringing in of, the introducing of, or the installation of happiness, and finally, or the instilling of happiness, and finally the path to happiness. That's not what he talked about. He talked about the noble truth of suffering, the cause of suffering. He talks about the cessation of suffering and the path to cessation of suffering. So what he's saying is, by default, we are happy. We allow ourselves to suffer. Isn't that a good thing? That the default state is happiness, which means you don't need to do abhisankara to be happy. Because abhisankara is very strenuous. You can't keep doing it forever. It's tiresome. So by default, you can be happy. If you do something, you can be unhappy. So all you have to do is just not do it. That's all. It's not a case of you are suffering, you have to do something to be happy. So keep doing it. That's not the way it is. This is why when I started by saying the word life, what I want to bring home to you folks is that life is not engineered to bring you suffering. That's not how life is. Life was never designed for us to suffer. Life just keeps going on. This is vipaka. Life is simply vipaka. The continuation of life is simply vipaka. Don't arahants continue to live after they have become arahants? They don't do any karma. That's vipaka. So you don't have to do anything to be happy. Life by default is happiness. What we do is we bring unhappiness, we bring suffering upon ourselves and make life miserable. Life is not miserable by default. Life is joyful by default. Life is pleasant by default. We cause ourselves suffering. Once you have understood this, you will feel so empowered. You will feel such a rush of relief, knowing that you are fully in control. Knowing that you can become independent. You can become independent. If, for instance, suffering was the default, you can never become independent. Because then you would always have to expect other things, other people, or other events to make you happy. Then there would not be any independence for you. You can become independent because happiness is by default, the state. It's the default state. So none of these things that you see around me, or the people that you live with at home, or your colleagues at the workplace, or your friends, or your relations, or anything you see around you, this entire world, none of it has been designed or engineered to bring you suffering. They're just there. And it's perfect the way it is. None of these things cause any suffering to an arahant, do they? No. Is that not solid evidence that they are not here to bring us suffering? None of these things can cause suffering to an arahant. And also you know that an arahant does not do abhisankhara. So if they don't bring, if they did really bring suffering, then an arahant would have to be someone who's constantly doing abhisankhara. If the outside world was a source of suffering, and if an arahant is someone who's always happy, then an arahant would have to be someone who's constantly doing abhisankhara. Why? Suffering comes from the outside, and then he's constantly pumping it out. Like when it's flooding. Or say there's a hole in the roof, and it's raining, and the water keeps coming in. Now, you're going to constantly have to keep pumping the water out. But that's not the way it is. None of these things bring us suffering. We bring it upon ourselves. Does that not sound like a joke? I mean, that's what a practical joke is. That's a practical joke. We cause ourselves suffering. We bring suffering upon ourselves. I mean, it makes me laugh to even say this out loud. As I think about how my mind works, I find that ridiculous. That I bring suffering upon myself? That's ridiculous. And the more you realize this, the more you are learning to be at peace with everyone around you. Then you don't harbor onto any bad feeling, because there's no bad feeling. There's no room for ill will. There's no room for hurt emotions. There's no room for resentment. There's no room for anger or frustration or annoyance. None of those emotions have any room to come in, to defile your mind. These are all self-inflicted, self-imposed. Suffering is self-imposed. So stop imposing it upon yourselves. Now there's something we need to do to get there. But even that is really simple. What you have to do is simple, but it's not easy. Being easy and being simple are not one and the same. Is it? No, it's not the same. Something can be easy and be complicated. But this is simple, but it's not easy. Tying your shoelaces. What do you think about it? That's complicated. Tying your shoelaces is complicated. You've got to pull the strings together, then you've got to put a knot together, then you've got to hold one of the strings while you twist the other one, and you've got to pass one through the loop of the other one, then you've got to pull the two of them together, then you've got to check if the two of them are the same length, otherwise it's just going to look funny. And if one is longer than the other, or if one is too long, then you're going to start treading on it. And this is complicated. But Nibbana is not like that. It's easy. But it's not simple. But it's very easy. Or rather, the other way around. It's quite simple, but it's not easy. It's very simple. All we need to do is to first bring the problem back home. That's where we must always begin. So I said, I'll give you some examples. Who here has noisy neighbors? Oh, you're lucky. When I was at uni, I used to live with some of my friends and in flats. So if you've ever lived in flats, right, then you know that noisy neighbors can become a problem. You have noisy neighbors, Buddha? Or are you the noisy neighbor? Noisy neighbors. So I remember when I was at uni, we used to have noisy neighbors. Sometimes they were not necessarily neighbors, but other students who used to cohabit with me. We had our own rooms, but sometimes they used to come home late. Sometimes they used to get together for a laugh, for whatever, cracking jokes, and sometimes stay up through the night. And I'd be in my room studying. Oh, it would be the other way around. Sometimes. Either way, noisy neighbors can be a problem. It's a problem, is it not? Yes. So you can even complain about it to the police, and failing that, you can even take it to the courts. Thank heavens for the judicial system. Thank heavens we have a court. We can take our problems to the courts. People who take their problems to the courts, have they realized where the problem truly is? No. They haven't brought the problem home. They're pointing the finger outwards. Problems with you. You change. Oh, you want change? All right, we'll see about that. I'm going to force you to change. So this is not, I'm not saying it's wrong to go to courts or whatever. That's not for me to say. There'll be certain things for which you will have to. Okay? But what I'm saying is just, don't take this too seriously. But I just want to think about it. If you have noisy neighbors, an Arahant would never complain about noisy neighbors though. That's the funny thing though. An Arahant would never complain about noisy neighbors. Because to an Arahant, the state of his mind, his or her mind is very different to that of ours. So what's the problem with noisy neighbors? How do we bring it back home? If I were to go and protest with a placard in my hand, what would it say? What would I protest for? I want silence. I want silence. I want silence. I want silence. See, you got the problem here. See, that's your problem. You want silence. That is your problem. See, they just want us to be sympathetic towards them, the protesters. They're not asking us to change, they just want us to be sympathetic. Reduce the bus fares. I want cheaper bus fares. Right? I want cheaper bus fares. I want cheaper, and that's the problem. Cheaper bus fares. Apparently the doctors have been on strike lately. Someone told me recently. They'll be asking for various things. No, that's the problem. Protest, demand. Someone demands. Isn't that the problem? I demand equal rights. I demand the right to vote. I demand for men and women to be treated equally. Isn't that the problem? I know this sounds so controversial, but is that not the problem? I want this, I want that, I want the other. That is the problem. Because for as long as you want something, folks, you can never be at peace. See, even if you get what you want, now you have to constantly be mindful of it. You got to keep looking out for it. Is it still the way I want it? Or has it changed? Because remember, when you said you wanted something and then you did something to get what you wanted, understand that it's external factors that have given rise to that result. So those external factors are in a constant state of flux. So they can change any moment. So therefore, you're going to always have to keep looking out. It's like herding cattle. Once you put one through the gate, the other one slipped out. Then you bring the other one in, the other one slipped out. Isn't this what life is all about? Isn't that what makes life interesting? Isn't life interesting? Isn't life exciting, interesting? Life is never boring, is it? No, because there's always some problem to deal with. Because always someone or one of these animals have always crept out through the gate. So you're going to have to go keep herding them, bringing them back in. It's a juggling act. How many balls do you have to keep up in the air? Mothers, how many balls? I can see 2 on either side, madam. Then there's the husband. Then there's the house. Then there's the car. Then there's the job. Then there's the neighbors. Then there's the relatives. How many balls do you have to keep up in the air? Every Sunday at 2 o'clock, I go to the circus. I'll let it sink in for a moment. Are you a late bloomer? I walk in through that door and I sit down here. I get the best seat in the house. I'm at the circus. What do I see? A bunch of clowns performing their juggling acts. Are you offended? I hope not. It was not meant to offend. It was just meant to help you understand. Isn't this what we do in life? Juggling. It's a juggling act. When was the last day you could fall asleep having no problems in your mind? Not worried, not concerned one bit about what's going to happen tomorrow. So many things to worry about. So many things to concern yourself about. So many pressures, so many stresses, so many anxieties. They say life is a rat race. What does that make you? A cat. Who wants this seat? Circus. Learn to bring the problem home. I know there are those among you who would, if given the choice, you would much rather be donned in robes than be donned in the clothes that you're in now. I understand that. But I know there are circumstances which keep you from making that jump. I'm not asking you all to come and ordain, because that would be unfair. It's no point talking to you about something you are unable to do because of circumstances. Not because you don't want to, but because you can't. What I'm asking you to do, folks, is if you can learn to bring the problem home, a lot of the stresses in your life will start disappearing. I promise you that. Life will become so much more easier. Life will become a lot more simpler, a lot more simple. If only, all you have to do is start bringing the problem back home. So you come home, it's husband's day to do the dishes. Normal and natural reaction is anger. That's only because you have still been unable to bring the problem home. You're home, but you haven't been able to bring the problem home. Through your practice, you need to be able to contemplate on the event, and your response has to change. Remember, bad things happen to everybody. Okay? Things go wrong for everybody. I used to think that it only used to rain on the poor people, but no, I discovered that it also rains on rich people. Unfortunate events are not gifts that are reserved for the poor. Unfortunate events happen all the time to all sorts of people. The fact that the dishes haven't been washed, this is an unfortunate event. Yes, true. But our response can change. Our normal reaction is to try and change the event, because the event is not to my liking. What's going on out there is not to my liking. I have a certain expectation, and that expectation is not being met. Therefore, I start pointing the finger out there, outwards. How do we bring the problem home? I want the dishes to have been done by the time I get home. Isn't that why you need to have written on your card? I want the dishes to have been done by the time I get home. That's what you need to have on your placard. This is your problem. Now you have brought the problem back home. See, the moment you are able to do this, you begin to find peace. I'm trying to ask you all to look at the world in a different way so you can start to taste peace. It's quite tasty. It's delicious. You're all entitled to a piece of peace. It's yummy, it's delicious. And peace is there within you. All you got to do is stop looking for it out there. It's within you. Stop looking for it and you have found it. So why do we want things? We want things because we are attached to things. We are attached to things because we believe that they are sources of happiness. That's all it is, in really simple terms, right? The youngest child in this room can understand this. Oh, maybe not the youngest. How old is she? Okay. She will in 4 years' time. I hope you have not come here looking for something really complicated. Nirvana is not complicated. I'm a simpleton. Can't you see in my face when you look at it that I'm a simple man? I'm not a very intelligent person. I'm a very simple person. I don't get complicated things. I get simple things. I understand simple things. I like to keep things simple. I don't like it when things get complicated because then I don't understand it. This is very simple. I can't think of anything more simple than this. This is so simple. Not easy, but simple. It's not easy to do, but it's simple. There's an expression, one of my teachers taught me this. Don't wish things were easier. He said, wish you were better. Changed my life. I learned this as a layperson when I had other aspirations. It wasn't nirvana back then. I wanted to become a rich man. I wanted to become a successful, powerful man. And he said, don't wish life was easier, wish you were better. I said, wow, what a way to look at the world. He said, don't wish for less problems. He said, wish for more skills. Incredible. Again, he was talking about what the Buddha said 2,500 years ago. Don't point your finger that way, point it back at you. If you want less problems, which way you pointing the finger? Less problems. That way. More skill? This way. Less challenges. Which way? That way. More wisdom? This way. I wish it was easier. Which way? That way. I wish I was better. Which way? This way. See, he taught me those principles and he taught me how to apply them in my lay life to make my worldly existence successful. Little did I realize that I would be using the same principles for an entirely different game altogether. On my transcendental journey, moving on from the worldly experience, worldly existence to a supra-mundane achievement, the same principles apply. Always point the finger back at you. This is what bringing it home is all about. It's a change of attitudes, folks. It's about your life philosophy. A rich man or a poor man isn't poor because he has little money. That's not why he's poor. He's poor because he has poor attitudes. He has the attitudes of a poor man. He expects a pay rise. That's what a poor man expects. Go and talk to any poor man. What would you like? A pay rise. That's what he'll ask for. Go and talk to a rich man, a successful man. What would you like? He'll say, more skill. How could I become better? How could I become wiser? How could I be more skillful? Because he realizes if he works on himself, then he will get all that he deserves. That is the path to success. Not going and asking for more, becoming more is the path to success. I want you all to become more. Don't ask for more, become more. Become a wiser person. Become a more skillful person. Become a cleverer person. Become a kinder person. Become a more generous person. Become a softer person. Become a better person. Then you shall get everything you deserve. Keep asking for things, people won't want to hear from you. No one likes someone who keeps asking for things, do they? Did your parents like it when you always kept going on nagging about things? I want this, Ammi, I want that, Ammi, I want the other thing, Ammi, Ammi this, Ammi that, Amma that, Amma this. No, people don't like people who ask for things. Does your employer, does your boss, your manager like it when you keep going and asking for things? Can I have a pay rise today? Can I have a pay rise tomorrow? Can I have a promotion? Can I have this? Can I have a bigger seat? Can I have a bigger office? Can I have this? Can I have that? He's going to get fed up. But what if you go and ask the question, how can I become more valuable to the company? What is it that I can do to become more valuable to the marketplace? How can I become more skilled? Can you give me some advice for that? See, that's a very different attitude, is it not? Different philosophy entirely. One is the poor man's philosophy, the other is the rich man's philosophy. I say the principles are the same. These are principles I learned as a young man when I was trying to make a successful worldly life for me. I use the same principles today. The principles are the same. It's just a different game. Teach your children. When they keep asking you for things, no Buddha, don't keep asking. Show me that you deserve it. Then I'll give it to you. Show me that you deserve it. Do you like it when a man who has all his limbs intact, right? He can work for himself and he comes to you begging. Do you like that? Someone comes begging to you and you can see perfectly that he's capable of doing his own thing. You wouldn't like that. Sometimes you wouldn't even stop to give him some money. Because even you would think, why is this man begging? He's got all his hands and legs intact. Why doesn't he go and find a job? See, in developed countries, it's forbidden to beg. It's against the law. I don't know about some of the other countries, but in the UK, it's against the law to beg. You can't beg. You can't beg in the streets. You can't go begging. It's against the law. So what people do is, rather than begging, they show us that they deserve something. So if you go into a tube station, sometimes you find there'll be people who bring their guitar, they'll bring their violin, they'll lay out a handkerchief, and they just start playing. Now when people pass them by and they listen to that, oh, this man, he's needy, he needs something, but he's showing that he's deserving of it. You don't get what you desire. You always get what you deserve. Show that you deserve it. That's why I say become more. Don't ask for more. Even on your path to Nibbana, become more. We talk about the anisansa, the consequences, the good consequences of giving, right? So for instance, offering a cut in a robe is considered to be a hugely meritorious deed. Offering a cut in a robe to a monk. It's no secret, most people know this. But what a lot of people don't know is that it's not the final act of giving that makes one, because for someone who has offered cut in a robes, if those merits do not support them to attain Nibbana in that birth, then chances are, if they are reminded of that meritorious deed at the point of death, then they're going to be born in a blissful plane for a very, very long time. Possibly as a deva for a very long time. These are some of the consequences of offering a cut in a robe. Now, what's something that people don't realize is that it's not necessarily the final act of giving the robe that makes this man, though this being, deserving of becoming a deva. It's the building up to it. It's the building up to it. It's the process in between I want to give it and giving it. Because during that period, then think about, how did the Buddha become the Buddha? Did he think, I want to become Buddha, and the next thing he knows he's a Buddha? Is that how it happened? No. Over a tremendously long period of time, he was becoming a Buddha. It was a very active process. Becoming the Buddha is that last moment of going from being a Bodhisattva to a Buddha, that happens like that. That's instantaneous. But for someone to have an aspiration to become a Buddha, and then the period it takes to fulfill the paramita, now that's a very long time. So really, the Buddha wasn't born in an instant. From the moment that the aspiration set into the mind, and then that point to the final point of becoming a Buddha, during that period, what was this man doing? He was becoming a Buddha. It's a very active process. So really, these are the causes which gave rise to that result of being of a Buddha coming into this world. Likewise, when you engage in a meritorious act, such as offering a cut in a robe, or even something as simple as giving someone a glass of water, ushering someone to a seat, helping an old woman across the road. What is obvious from the outside is that last event, it's the final event. That's the observable thing. But remember, Chetanaham bhikkhave kammang vadami. The Buddha says it's your volition which determines the karma. Your volition is your karma. You will be unable. See, what makes you offer something to someone else is the thinking process that happens between the point of, I want to give this, and the time between that event and you actually giving it. During that period, the thoughts that form in your mind are thoughts of giving. That is what transforms you from a human to a deva. Mentally, you become a deva. All that's left now to do is to become a physical deva. This is why I say, become better. Don't worry about the result. You couldn't become you can't be an arahant. All you can do is instill those virtues within yourself, and every day, every moment, keep becoming. Eventually, an arahant will be born. Is this making sense to you? It's the process of making that matters. It's not the final result. Don't worry about the final result. So don't any of you strive to become an arahant. It's the becoming process that's important. The virtues of an arahant, instill them within yourself. Cultivate those values within yourself. Then you don't have to worry about becoming an arahant. Unfortunately, it's the same word I have to use for both of these, in both these contexts, become and becoming, and that's why it can sound a little bit confusing. What I'm trying to say is, don't worry about the result. Focus on what needs to be done to achieve the result. And the onset of the result is automatic. You don't need to worry about that. The onset of the result, don't need to worry about that. All you need to do is work on the causes which is going to give rise to that result. Again, simply cause and effect, after all. This is why I say, don't wish it was easier. This is what my teacher taught me. Don't wish it was easier. He said, wish you were better. See, again, what he's saying is, become better. Don't worry about the outside. I said I wanted to be a rich man. He said, no, that's the wrong way to think. He said, don't want to be a rich man. Don't want that. Change your mindset, he said. Think like a rich man. He said, inside your mind, your mentality has to be that of a rich man. Because a rich man is not someone who has a lot of money. A rich man is someone who thinks like a rich man. Because steal all the money that belongs to a rich man. Go back to him in a year's time. What's happened to him again? He's become a rich man again. But someone who doesn't have the mentality of a rich man, he's won the lottery, he's got $1 million, he steals the $1 million. Go back in a year's time. What's happened? He's still a poor man. He's still waiting to win the lottery. Again. He's not a rich man. He's just a man with a lot of money. Which is not the same as being a rich man. And the same principles apply in nirvana, folks. This is what I want you to understand. Become a better person. This is why we talk about virtues. This is why we talk about giving. This is why we talk about forgiving. This is why we talk about metta and compassion and loving kindness and all these virtues. This is why they're so important. I can talk to you about anicca, dukkha, anatta, yes, but that is the end result. To become an arahant, what you need to do is instill the values of an arahant within yourself. You can't become an arahant like that. The onset of the arahat chitta, because eventually this is what you're hoping for, right? One day in your mind, a chitta will arise, and that will be the arahat pala chitta. This is the final goal for all of us. When that arrives, then when that chitta arises in our mind, that's it. Kina jati usitam brahmacharyam katang karniyan naparang ittattayati pajanati. I have done what it is that is left to do, and what it is I have to do, and there's nothing else that's left to do. That will be your proclamation of your arahathood. But don't ask for that. That will come. All you need to do is become better. Become a better person. Become more virtuous. Become more generous. Become kind. Become soft. Become respecting towards others. Or respectful towards others. Become gentle. Why do you think I talk about these things like worship your parents? These are all steps on the way to becoming an arahant. Because what some people do is they come to the foot of the mountain, they look up at the pinnacle and go, oh, never going to do this. Because they look at the top of the mountain. It doesn't work like that. That can set you back. That can take away any hope you had. What you need to do is look at the next step. A journey of 1,000 leagues. Start with one step. All you need to do is put your foot in the next step. That's it. That's all you have to do right now. Don't worry about the next one and the next one and the one after that. Don't worry about that. All you have to do, all day, every day, until you achieve your destination, is keep the next step. That's all. You will naturally be taken to your destination. You don't need to get to the destination. Sometimes people get so frustrated because they keep looking at the destination and they think, this is a long way away. When are we ever going to be able to do this? Sometimes as lay people, you might look at monks and go, when are we ever going to be able to do this? That can be quite disheartening. That can be quite frustrating. So don't do that. Because that is not the path to Nibbana. You can't vex about something that's going to relieve you of all vexations. What are you frustrated about? Nirvana. What is Nirvana? Free of all frustrations. Huh? Come again? You need to enjoy the experience of Nirvana. Not when you reach it, now. This needs to be fun. The journey to fun has to be fun. The journey to fundum has to be fun. Like fundum as in kingdom, fundum. That has to be fun. That has to be fun. That has to be pleasant. Has to be enjoyable. I was speaking to a group of people yesterday, and I asked them, when the thought of Saturday comes into your mind, what's the feeling that naturally kicks in, sets in? Because we have a sermon on a Saturday, as you know, Guru Swami Nuance's sermon. What kind of feelings set into your mind? Because they are in the process of, or will eventually become anagarikas in near future. So I was talking to them and asked them, because they are required to attend the sermons. Unlike others, they are required to attend the sermons. So I asked them, when the thought that tomorrow is Saturday or today is Saturday morning comes to your mind, and you know that you have to go to the sermon, what sort of feeling comes to your mind naturally? Is it one of, yay, it's Saturday? Or is it one of, oh God, it's Saturday again? In other words, how does your heart feel? How does your heart feel? Because sometimes your face can give false appearances. You can wear a mask, but your heart is crying out loud, but your face is trying to put on a smile. We need to be honest with ourselves. We need to be genuine with ourselves. We can't hide. This is what I'm saying. On the path to Nibbana, folks, for all of you, we are on a journey to achieving ultimate bliss, right? That's what Nibbana is. Ultimate bliss. Ultimate happiness where there is no suffering whatsoever. Yes, that is the destination, yes. But you need to be able to taste that destination right now. You need to be able to smell it from afar. Like you're walking into a garden of roses or sweet smelling flowers. You can smell it from afar, right? As you approach it, you go, it must be in that direction. Let's keep going forward. It's that lure that's going to keep bringing you in. The lure of the sweet smelling flowers is going to keep luring you in. It's going to keep dragging you in. Or it's so inviting. You're going to want to keep walking in. Ask yourselves, are you experiencing that now? For instance, when it's Sunday, if you come here for the Sunday sermons, if you are genuinely on track, to Nibbana, when the thought that it's Sunday morning, you should have the feeling of, yes, Sunday again. Woohoo! Not the case of, we have to see his wretched face again today. Then you're not on track. That feeling, because you all have to feel that. You must feel one way or the other. Where you're either really excited, really looking forward to it, or you're dreading the day. If you have understood what it is I'm talking about when I say bring the problem home, if you have really understood, if it's really clicked, you're someone, when it comes Wednesday or Saturday or Sunday, whichever day you come to the monastery, right, you're someone who goes, aha, yes, today's Sunday, today's Saturday, today's Wednesday, and you keep looking forward to your Wednesdays, you keep looking forward to your Saturdays, you keep looking forward to your Sundays. But if you still haven't discovered what I mean when I say bring the problem home, then perhaps you still have to be dragged from your bed into your best clothes, and then onto the bus, and then into this room, and then onto the chair. And then from the moment you come in, is it time yet? Is it time yet? Is it time yet? But it's okay, we were all there at one point or the other. No, I didn't come into this world knowing all of this. I came into this world, I met a teacher, and he taught me. That's when I discovered. That's when I discovered the peace that was always in my heart. That's when I discovered the joy that was always in my heart. That's when I discovered that I bring suffering upon myself. Suffering is artificial. Happiness is natural. It's one of the simplest ways I could put it. Happiness is natural. Suffering is artificial. We fabricate suffering. Let me quickly draw it out for you, just as a reminder. I see some new faces today as well, perhaps it will help. Let's talk about a couple more examples while they set the board up. I'm starving. So if you came along to the meditation program last week, I said to discover the problem, to bring the problem home, you need to be able to construct a sentence with the word want in it. I'm starving. I want food. See, for someone who has been able to bring the problem home, they're going to, while of course, when you're starving, you have to feed yourself, I've no question about that. But they're not going to stop there. They're going to try to fix the problem of wanting food. Isn't that why you're in this room right now? Are you all not here because you want to stop becoming hungry? So really then, there are people who are not in this room, in another room, in a conference somewhere, they're trying to tackle the global food shortage. We are both trying to address the same problem. But we've got different approaches, haven't we? People out there, they're trying to grow more food, cultivate crops, help the farmers, produce more food to help tackle the problem of hunger. You're also here to tackle the problem of hunger, just a different approach. You're here saying, Swaminathan, I feel hungry. I feel hungry not because there's a shortage of food, because I have a stomach. I have a stomach. I have a stomach that gets emptied, and therefore I experience hunger. What can I do about it? See, you brought the problem home. They took the problem out. I'm hungry because I'm here to be hungry. In the case of dishes, so you come home, you see the dishes have not been done, right? It's not your turn, it's your spouse's turn this week, and the dishes haven't been done. So what would we write on a board, on our placard? I want the dishes to be washed, to be done, yes. Now, of course, you could ask me, well, do we not do the dishes then? Do we keep them dirty? Is that what you're suggesting? Let's not wash our dishes, let's just keep cooking meal after meal in the same dishes? No, that's not what we're talking about. Of course, we have to be practical. Even an arahant would wash their dishes, wouldn't they? But we need to be able to draw the line between physical suffering and mental suffering. An arahant would wash their dishes or his alms bowl, because if you don't wash your alms bowl, what's going to happen? The food left over in that, right? It's going to go off. Then bacteria is going to grow in there. Germs, and then eventually he's going to end up with a stomachache. That is going to bring physical suffering. But physical suffering is not the same as mental suffering. Physical suffering does not bring mental suffering. Mental suffering is always caused by wanting something. I wanted my wife to have cleaned the dishes by the time I got home. She hasn't done it. When I point the finger out there, I say, wife, why didn't you clean the dishes? Now I'm angry, I'm annoyed, I'm frustrated. You should have done what I wanted you to do. Whereas if I pointed the finger back at me, I wanted to see her have washed the dishes. If I didn't want it, if I wasn't so persistent about it, then it would be okay. The dishes haven't been done. Okay, there's a problem. It's just there's not my problem. Again, I think even this we talked about either last week or the week before that. How we make a problem my problem through this bridge that is called self. Again, or the bridge of wanting. The bridge of wanting makes problems my problem. When it's my problem, we take it personally. This is the personification of problems. Otherwise, there's a problem. Of course, there's a problem. Think about the Buddha, right? Why did he lay out 227 rules of conduct? Wasn't that because there were problems? Of course, there were problems. If the Buddha was still around, by this time, there are probably about 15,000 rules laid out for the Sangha. Right? Because not everyone who comes into robes comes in for the purpose of fulfilling their salvation. And some people are up to various mischief. So, of course, the Buddha would have to lay out rules. In the first 20 years, the Buddha didn't lay out any rules. He was just the Obada Pratimoksha, which was just an instruction rather than rules. But after the first 20 years, he had to start laying out rules for the Sangha, to help discipline them. So, see, the Buddha could not be mentally affected by it. There was never a time where, it's interesting, I'm glad you asked the question. Sometimes when I get together with the rest of the Sangha Sabha at the monastery or Sangha Council, who look after the governance matters of the monastery, I sometimes remind them, Swaminatha, let's never become frustrated about problems. Right? Let's never become frustrated with problems. So when we get together, there'll be various types of problems. Sometimes problems to do with monks, their well-being, their safety, right? Think about, the barriers that we have put out there, right? And all the safety procedures. How many times do you think we got together to discuss, do we or do we not? Do we or do we not? And to what extent? And there were some long drawn-out discussions because, of course, the moment you do that, it's going to inconvene you. We didn't want to do that. And of course, it's going to inconvene the Anagarikas and the Anagarikas, and of course other monks. So it's not something that we wanted to, it's just something that we had to do, like all things. Right? But when these problems come to us, we're always careful to not let these problems frustrate us. And I'm relating this story to because this is how I want you to deal with problems in life. Never allow a problem to frustrate you. Because if you do so, then what you're doing is you have made the problem my problem. In other words, you're saying, I want this. The problem is an indication that what I want isn't happening. If you see that is the problem, now you have two problems. There's the problem, and then there's the case of what I want isn't happening. Now that's two problems. Does that make sense to you? There's the problem, and then there's the problem of what I want is not happening, like the air cons. There's a problem right now. That's on 27, this is still on 26. But there was a problem. Okay, but I had a choice about making that problem my problem. Because if I made that a personal preference, this is very subtle, and I really want you to understand this, right? It's okay for there to be a preference. Just don't make it a personal preference. If it's warm in here, then I think we would all prefer for it to be maybe 26 or 25. We would all prefer for it to be at a lower temperature, right? But if that problem extends from the physical to the mental realm, now it causes mental suffering. And that is my problem. That's when it becomes a personal problem. Because we have introduced a person into it, a self into it. Now it becomes my problem. Because now there's a mental wanting. There's a preference, then there's a personal preference. Personal preferences are bad. Preferences, that's okay. I mean, would you prefer for it to, let's say, We've got chairs laid out here, right? So you can all sit. What if we laid out benches rather than chairs? There's no backrest. Would that be okay? No, that would be quite uncomfortable, would it not? Of course it would be. Is it bad to say that? Don't know what Swami Maharaj might think. That's not a klesha. That's not a defilement. If we just laid out benches with no cushions, right, just plastic benches, of course that's going to become uncomfortable pretty soon. You can't rest your back, right, and your bottom's going to start to get sore, right, all these problems. What if we laid out beds, comfortable beds, right? How about that? Would that be okay? But it's comfortable. Yes. They're falling asleep already, Putta. Just imagine if you put beds. So that is also not suitable. But that has to stop at the physical level. Because there are factors which are conducive to one falling asleep. That doesn't have to be mental, that's physical. And then there are factors which are conducive to one feeling comfortable or uncomfortable. That's also physical. But the moment we allow a physical problem to extend into the mental realm, now that's a problem, because that barrier is wanting. That's where you draw the line. Wanting. I want it to be this way. So there's now a personal preference. That's when it becomes problematic. That's where suffering starts. Otherwise there's no suffering. We make our suffering. So in the case of going back home and finding the dishes not being done, I wanted the dishes to be done by the time I got home. Mentally, there was that expectation. So imagine it was a monastery, and we had arahants who had given an instruction to, say, a Samanera monk said, by the time I get back, please make sure that the floors have been swept. Right? So that's an instruction that has been given. The arahant would come back to find that perhaps the Samanera monk had fallen asleep and he hasn't swept the floor. Now he'll probably go and speak to the Samanera monk and ask, excuse me, why have you not swept the floor? I asked you to sweep the floor. To which, of course, he's going to want an answer. But let's say the Samanera monk says, oh, I'm sorry, I forgot. Or he comes up with some ridiculous excuse. Something ridiculous. Now, of course, the arahant might actually even speak sternly. That's wrong. You shouldn't have done that. Next time, please don't let me find you not having done what I have asked you to do. The words will sound strong and fierce and straightforward. There's no wishy-washy. An arahant is not if you don't mind, please can you sweep next time? No, it's not like that. Sometimes when the Buddha laid out rules of conduct to the monks, if you read the Tripitaka in the Vinaya Pitaka, oftentimes the Buddha would summon the monk who has been accused, and he would say, you foolish man. That's how he would start. You foolish man. Can you imagine the Buddha saying that? How might he have said, foolish man? If you wouldn't mind, please don't do that again. Sorry if I hurt your feelings. Do you think the Buddha would have said that? Would have spoken like that? No. This is the principle of the school. He wouldn't have spoken like that. This is the king of the Sangha. He wouldn't have spoken like that. He would have said, you foolish man. Is this what I have laid out rules for? Is this what I have taught you the Dhamma for? To act in such a foolish manner? How dare you bring insult upon the Mahasangha? How dare you bring insult upon my teaching? What would people think about your teacher? How dare you? But without a modicum of anger. Not the tiniest bit of anger. After having admonished this man, this monk, so, put yourself in this situation. Sometimes say you've blamed someone for having done something wrong, and you see the guy the next day. Still, sometimes those resentful feelings keep lingering on. The Buddha won't be like that. Having addressed the problem, it would be like it never happened. Having addressed the problem, that's it. Okay, we've addressed the problem, right, let's move on. So what were you here for? How can I help you? Not the tiniest bit of resentment, no lingering feelings of ill will, no anger, because there's no room for anger. The reason for that is because there is preference, but there's no personal preference. This is how the mind of an Arahant works, I think. I will hasten to add. It must be, it ought to be that way. Because all an Arahant, then the mind of an Arahant, all that's lacking between us, between our minds and the mind of an Arahant is this wanting, attachment, raga, dvesha, moha, whichever way you look at it. Ultimately, raga, dvesha, moha are manifestations of wanting. It's only because you want something do you eventually experience raga, dvesha and moha. If you don't want anything, then you're not going to experience that. Those are symptoms of the disease of wanting. See, so you've got to understand that an Arahant is someone who can tackle any problem in this world. You can invite an Arahant to the global food shortage symposium and he'll be there. He'll talk about the problems. He may ask, okay, what are we here to discuss now? The day I become an Arahant, I could be at this monastery and deal with all the problems. I'm not someone who's going to run away from problems. Even if I might feel that way today, I'm never going to feel like that after I have become an Arahant. Because today it may be that, if there are too many problems, I get stressed. But an Arahant never gets stressed. Because there's no breaking point. There's nothing to break. So how can there be a breaking point? Every camel has a straw that breaks its back. But not an Arahant. There's no straw that breaks its back because he hasn't got a back. He ain't a camel. That's all it is. When, you see, all of frustrations, all anxiety and stress and worry, these are all symptoms of wanting. Take away wanting, that's it. This is why I say, when you bring it back home, folks, there's only one problem to be dealt with. Only one. There's only one problem. Not two problems, one. But when you look outside, lots of problems to deal with. That's why I say, when those people go out with those placards, right? To find the real problem, you just need to spot the sentence with the word want in it. That's all. If, say, for example, you work in customer service and you received a complaint letter about one of your subordinates and their conduct with the customer, to really identify the problem, just read that letter and find the sentence with the word want in it. That's the problem. But what the customer is saying is, I want to keep my wanting. You fix your you fix your stuff. So what should you write back in your response letter to the complaint? Mr. Customer, you want good service. That's your problem. Could you do that? Well, you could, but you wouldn't have a job the next day. No, because that is worldly. In worldly existence, you got to deal with those problems in that way. So really, if we were to put an Arahant, let's say we put an Arahant into the role of manager to the customer advisor or customer service manager, right? Into that role in a company. He receives a letter of complaint about one of his subordinates. What do you think an Arahant would write back in his response letter? Is he going to point out, customer, you wanted this is your problem? No, that would be foolish. An Arahant is not a fool. An Arahant is not a fool. He'll also write back, in the response letter, he'll say, we are very sorry for your inconvenience. We will address the problem, we will speak to our colleagues, we'll find out what happened and we'll make sure it doesn't happen again. And here's a reimbursement of your payment. An Arahant will deal with it appropriately. An Arahant is not a fool. So I don't know what idea you have about an Arahant. He's not someone who lives in fairyland. He's not an airy-fairy person. Right? He is a very grounded person. He breathes, he eats and sleeps and talks like us. Sometimes you might not even be able to spot an arahant. Would you ever see an arahant using a mobile phone? Yes, possible. Why not? Would you ever see an arahant walking along the road looking this way, that way? Why not? Perhaps that is what he's required to do. Maybe he's looking for something or someone. So how can he look for someone if he keeps looking down? An arahant is not a wizard. He's not a magician, or he's not some kind of imaginary fairy creature. He's a normal human being like you and us, you and I. The only difference is, in his mind, there is no attachment. There is nothing that he wants mentally. Because for an arahant, it's perfect the way it is. Everything is perfect the way it is. He doesn't want to change anything. In a particular role, he will try his best to arrange an organization or some kind of event to achieve a desired outcome. But that is not his personal desired outcome. There is no such thing. That is all it is. And this is why, you see, an arahant is simply someone who does not suffer. All he has eradicated from his mind is the cause of suffering. That's it. He hasn't eradicated anything else. In going from a pruthakjana to an arahant, the only thing you need to do is to eradicate the cause of suffering and nothing else. Leave everything else in place. If there is something that is the cause of suffering, identify that and remove it. Leave everything else. There's a spanner in the works. Just remove the spanner and let it work fine. It'll work fine. That's all an arahant is. This is why today I know that becoming an arahant is something that I can do one day. I can say that with full confidence, that it is something that I can do. It is something that you can all do. Before I discovered what an arahant might be like, I thought, how can anyone become an arahant? The last I heard of arahants, they flew in the air. They went underground. They walked on water. They ate fire. I thought they were wizards. I thought they were like imaginary creatures from a fairy tale. That is not who an arahant is. It may be that they have supernatural powers. It may be, but that's not the mind of an arahant. The mind of an arahant is simply a mind that does not suffer because the cause of suffering has been eradicated. This is what the Buddha came into this world to teach us. The Four Noble Truths. The first noble truth of suffering. Then he talks about the cause of suffering. Then he says, if you eradicate the cause, you will eradicate suffering. Then he says, this is the path to do it. He didn't take care about anything else. That's all he said. All he came into this world is to teach us how to eradicate suffering. That's it. I want you all to feel that arahathood is achievable in your lives. I want you all to personally believe in this. I want each and every one of you to really believe in this, folks, that you can become an arahant. It's not a dream. It is a reality. You can do it. Why not? All you need to do is to eradicate the cause of suffering, nothing else. When it has been so plainly laid out in front of us. There's only one thing we need to do. You don't need to worry about anything else. Just eradicate the cause of suffering. And to eradicate the cause of suffering, look at how simple the Buddha has laid this out for us. All he said was, contemplate and acknowledge and understand, comprehend anicca. That's all we need to do. If you remember, Guru Swami drew out two formulae, which I will write out on the board for you to help you understand, because that really helped me understand a few things, and I hope it'll do the same for you as well. Now, we know that we all experience suffering. Right? Is that news to anyone? No. That's why you're here. If there was no suffering, you wouldn't need to be here, right? So we all know that there is suffering. And we all also believe that there must be some way that we can put an end to suffering. Otherwise, you won't be here. So these are the reasons you're here. One, there is suffering, or certainly you experience suffering. And two, there must be a way that we can bring suffering to an end. If both of these weren't true, you wouldn't be here. Would you agree with me on that? Yes. So that shows us that suffering is the result of causes. If it weren't the result of causes, then suffering would be something that is static, cannot be changed. It's just the way it is. If suffering was permanent, then you wouldn't need to be here because there's nothing we can do about it. You're here because suffering is the result of causes. So once we have eradicated the causes, the result, that is suffering, can be eradicated. All on board with me on that? Excellent. Now look at the first formula that's up there, the first equation. The only way one can be happy is if what we attach to is something that is to our liking. Nietzsche. So if there is something that is pleasurable, joyful and essence-full, or let's just take something that is pleasurable to keep it simple. If there is something that were pleasurable, and if you attach yourself to it, then of course the result would be happiness. Is there anything wrong with that statement? No, if there's something that is Nietzsche, something that is in fact pleasurable, there is absolutely nothing wrong with attaching yourself to it. The reason we say that attachment causes suffering is because the world is not Nietzsche. If the world were pleasurable, so everything around us, if it were pleasurable, in other words, if it were to our liking, then it wouldn't matter that you attached yourself to it, because the end result would be happiness or joy. However, we do know that there is suffering that we experience in our life. The reason that we suffer is because we attach to something that is anicca, unpleasurable. But the fact of the matter is, if we knew that it was anicca, if we knew that it was unpleasurable, we wouldn't have attached ourselves to it in the first place. Let me elaborate that with an example. This is a betel leaf. Have you all chewed on one? Some point? You should. You can have this before you go. Just make sure he doesn't get into the habit of it. Some people enjoy chewing on betel leaves. And that's because they believe it's pleasurable. For them it's pleasurable. That experience is pleasurable. However, doctors would hasten to add that betel leaves are carcinogens. In other words, they can cause cancer. They are cancerous. They're not cancer, cancerous or carcinogens. They could cause someone a cancer. This is why chewing on betel leaves as a habit is not something that is condoned. Now, let's say this leaf had a fatal poison in it. So the moment you chewed on it, you'd fall dead. Okay? Who wants to volunteer? It's got a poison in it. The moment you chew on it, you're going to fall dead, drop dead. Who wants to volunteer? No one. You'd be a fool to want to volunteer for that. Right? So, if you knew that this was poisonous, you wouldn't chew on it. Someone who would chew on this would chew on it only because of their idea or their understanding that this is not poisonous. Their belief is that there's nothing wrong with chewing a betel leaf. There's nothing wrong with it. It's not poisonous. It's not carcinogenic. It's fine. I can chew on it and be perfectly fine. But really, if it were that this is poisonous, what you know or don't know has no bearing on it. Do you only get wet in the rain if you knew that water can make you wet? No, it makes no difference. If you jump off a tall building, do you only fall to the ground if you know about gravity? What if you didn't know about gravity? Would you not fall then? Of course you would. So whether knowing about it or not knowing about it makes no difference. If there's something that is true about this world, then it has an effect on everyone, regardless of whether you know about it or you don't know about it. But if you knew that this was poisonous, you wouldn't eat it in the first place. And you all agree with me on that. If you really knew that this was poisonous, you wouldn't eat it. Now, going back to the equation, you all tell me that you're suffering, that suffering impacts you in some way, shape or form in your life. This is why you're here. But if you knew that, now you all also know that attachment is the cause of suffering. Yes, we all know that attachment is the cause of suffering. But you wouldn't attach yourself to something if you knew that the thing you're attaching yourself to was unpleasurable. Would you? No. Just like a poison beetle leaf. If you knew that one chew of it can drop you dead, then you wouldn't chew on it. So the reason you chew on it is because you don't know about this. You're ignorant. You're ignorant about its true nature. And so that says something. It says something about the second statement. This is why I put that other bit within braces. People suffer. Then the cause of suffering is attachment. But people attach to things which are anicca, but they think that they are nicca. Anicca things appear as nicca, or unpleasurable things appear to them as pleasurable things. Otherwise they wouldn't attach themselves to it. Only because they appear as pleasurable things do they attach themselves to it. If they didn't appear as pleasurable things, they wouldn't dream of attaching themselves to it. In fact, so putting it in plain language, if one were able to see the true nature of something, they would never attach themselves to it. Because what is the true nature of everything? Anicca. In other words, it is unpleasurable. Because they are not sources of pleasure. The moment you attach yourself to something, it's only going to bring you pain, never pleasure. Therefore, you cannot say that something's pleasure. You cannot qualify something as being pleasurable. And when I say something, that's everything. In reference to the mind, we are talking about Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana, which encompasses everything, right? Because this is how everything reaches our mind. Through the five aggregates, Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. So when we talk about everything, we are talking ultimately about Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana. And we know then that Rupa, Vedana, Sanya, Sankara, Vijnana are the very things our minds attach itself to. But if the mind knew and understood and comprehended that they are actually anicca, if the mind knew their true nature, the mind wouldn't attach itself to it. When was the last time you went and put your hand on a hot iron, knowing that it's a hot iron? When was the last time you did that? Never did that. When was the last time you went and dipped your finger into a pot of boiling hot water, knowing that it was boiling hot water? No. Have you seen electric cookers? Electric cookers can be dangerous. Why? Because you don't see the flames. Especially if you have children around, you've got to be very careful because you can't see the flame. So there's no visual indication that this is hot. Right? So you've got to be very careful. This is why a hot iron can be dangerous. If you don't see the bulb next to it, you never know. This is why you've got to be very careful with children around things like that. So the same concept applies here. This is like an electric cooker. You put your hand on the hot plate or on the electric cooker because you don't see that it's hot and it could burn you. If you knew it, if you could see it in its true sense, in its true real sense, you wouldn't put your hand on it. This is why the Buddha says, it's the ignorance of people, or it's our ignorance that makes us suffer. Our ignorance is seeing anicca things as nicca. But in real terms, seeing anicca things as nicca, yes. In real terms, everything in this world is anicca. One, nothing is to our liking, because they're all cause and effect. That is number one. Number two, nothing is pleasurable. You can't seek pleasure in anything and be satisfied, because no object in this world can bring us any pleasure, because they're not sources of pleasure. Are they sources of pain? Are objects in this world sources of pain? No. Objects in this world neither bring us pain nor pleasure. They don't bring us either of these things. That's why I say none of these things around me bring me any pain or suffering. They have nothing to do with pain or suffering. Or rather, they have nothing to do with pain or pleasure. This is not a source of pleasure. This is also not a source of pain. My mind by itself alone, through its interaction with that object, can suffer. It's entirely self-contrived. Nothing that came from the outside. All the mind had to do to suffer is look at that object and want it. That's it. Nothing else. Here's my task to you. I want you to experience suffering. Okay? I want you to experience suffering by using this bouquet of flowers. What is the one thing you need to do? Wanting. Try suffering without that. Try doing something else and suffer. So don't want this. So as in that's the verb, don't want. Okay, want as a verb in this context, not the noun, verb. Don't want this and suffer if you can. Can you? No. You can't suffer. You're only able to suffer because your mind can want. That is, wanting is what enables, which is what qualifies your mind to suffer. Take away wanting. There is nothing in this world that you can do to suffer. I couldn't force you to suffer if you didn't want it. I could come and hold a gun to your head and say, hey, suffer, otherwise I'm going to shoot you. If you have given up wanting, that situation is only going to end up with you being dead. Do you understand the story I've just related there? If the circumstance was that I demand that you suffer or I shall kill you. So I've got a gun held up to your head. And your mind is free of all wanting. What is the only outcome of this situation? You're going to be dead. Why? There is no way that you can suffer if your mind has given up wanting. There is nothing that you can do to suffer. Even if you wanted to suffer, you couldn't suffer. Even if you wanted to. That's like a Sotapan. Even if they wanted to pay a trip to the hells, they couldn't. It's too late for that now. So if you want to know what the 4 great hells are like, there's only one thing you mustn't do. Do anything else you want. Just one thing, don't do that. What's that? Become a Sotapan. If you want to know what avidya is like, there's one thing you mustn't do. That is becoming a Sotapan. Anything else is fine. Just don't become a Sotapan. Likewise, if you want to experience suffering, there's only one thing you need to do. That's not give up wanting. Keep wanting. Similarly, the flip side of that is, if you want to rid your mind of suffering, there's only one thing you need to do. That is rid the mind of wanting. Take away wanting, and there's nothing that can cause your mind to suffer. That's it. So simple. So why does the mind want? The mind wants because all these anicca things appears to the mind as nicca. This is what ignorance is. This is avidya. This is what ignorance is. Things which are anicca appearing to be nicca. Because if we were able to see them as anicca, would you attach yourself to it? No. And if you didn't attach yourself to it, would there be suffering? No. So this is why, if you remember in some some weeks ago in one of the sermons I told you, don't try to let go. Letting go requires effort. Realizing anicca requires wisdom. Letting go requires effort. For instance, you want to eat cake. A cake has been brought home and it's on the table. Right? They take it out of the box. Chocolate cake, lovely dressings on it, and there's a strawberry or cherry, right? Glazed cherry in the middle, center, right? And flakes around it. Why your face is starting to go funny? Do you want a serviette? Just to wipe the drool? Right? So chocolate cake there. If you want to eat it, if you want to taste this chocolate cake, to not taste it when you still want to requires effort. Requires effort. So that your mind would be saying, can I? And the other part of your mind will go, no. And again the mind will go, can I, please, can I? And the other part of your mind, the good side will go, no, you can't have it. Come on, you're better than this. Come on, you can do this, come on. What is this doing? This is effort. It's like putting the accelerator down on a vehicle when it's stuck in mud. The wheels are turning, but the vehicle isn't moving anywhere. Applying a lot of effort. I want to do it, but I shan't do it because it's bad. It's not good. What would Swami Nuhansa say if he knew this? These are thoughts that come to your mind. This is because of effort. You're trying to use effort to let go. This is why I say, don't let go. All you need to do is see it as it really is. That requires wisdom, not effort. That requires wisdom, prajna. Remember, samma vayama is a result of samma ditti, not the other way around. It's not samma vayama, samma sati, samma sankappa, samma ditti. That's not how it works. It starts at samma ditti. So it starts at wisdom. Wisdom helps us understand anicca things as anicca. And it also helps us understand nicca things as nicca. What is that? That's Nibbana. That is the only thing that is nicca. And it's nicca because Nibbana is not the result of causes. It's not the result of causes. Getting to Nibbana is the result of causes. Indeed, you have to do something to get to Nibbana. But once you're in Nibbana, once you have realized Nibbana, you don't need to do anything to maintain that realization. There's no such thing. Because it's not the result of causes. Take for example this fan. To keep it in this state, I have to exert energy. The moment I stop exerting energy, what's going to happen? It's going to drop. It's going to fall. Why is that? It being in this state, as in this height from the table, okay, isn't that the result of causes? So isn't this an abhisankara then? This is an abhisankara. I'm continuously providing the causes in the right order, in the right fashion, to the right quantities, which keeps this in this state, as in this, facing this way and not that way, right? At this height from this table. So I'm constantly providing potential energy that has to be constantly provided to maintain it in this state. This is a sankata. Something that constantly has to be formed. This is a formation. This is a sankara, abhisankara. But Nibbana is not an abhisankara. That's why Nibbana is defined as sabba sankara samato. Etan santang, etam panitam, yadidam, sabba sankara samato. Which is the cessation of all formations. The cessation of all abhisankara. You don't need to continue to do abhisankara because Nibbana is not the result of causes. When something's not the result of causes, it's like a really simple example. For a man to be alive, you must continue to provide causes like breath, food, so on and so forth. A man's dead. What must you do to keep him dead? When a man's dead, what must you do to keep him dead? Nothing. Why? Is being dead the result of causes? No. Dying is the result of causes, yes. But being dead is not result of causes. It's the cessation of causes which kept him alive. Once those causes were eradicated, now the state that this man is in is called death. Likewise, when existence and the causes of all existence have been eradicated, now that state is called Nibbana, which is not the result of causes. Does that make sense? Sabba Sankara Samato. This is why Nibbana is the only thing that is Nitya. Therefore, there's no problem with attaching yourself to it because it's never going to change. It's never going to change. Only if something is dependent on causes can it change, because when the causes change, the effect shall change. The product shall change. But if it's not the result of causes, it's not going to change. Okay, today is Sunday. Is that not the result of causes? Of course. What's going to happen in a few hours? It's going to be Monday. Sorry, is that a horror story? Okay, let me give you a comedy then. In a few days' time again, it's going to be Friday. Right? So, all other things in this world except for Nibbana is conditioned. Therefore, Nibbana is the only entity which is not really even an entity. You can't really say it's an entity. Because for something to be an entity, it has to be entertained. In other words, the causes have to continue to be supported and provided. But Nibbana is the only thing that is Nitya, and therefore attachment to it is fine. And you will be happy. This is supreme happiness, supreme bliss. So coming back to the second equation again, do you all agree that you all suffer, right? This is why you're here. Then understand, folks, that the reason you suffer is because you are attached to something that is anicca but looks like it's nitya. Why does something that is anicca look like it's nitya? Because of ignorance. That is avidya. That is foolishness. That is the only reason you would attach to something. If you could see anicca things as being anicca, you would never attach yourself to it. So this is why I say, you don't need to worry about attachment. Attachment is the cause of suffering. Agreed. Yes, I get that. But what you need to do to stop suffering is not stop attachment. It's to eradicate attachment. To eradicate attachment, you've got to find the cause of attachment. Yankincha samudaya dhammang sabbhantan nirodha dhammanti. Whenever you want to eradicate something, you got to look at the causes. Treat the causes and you will treat the result. You will treat the effect of it. So if you want to rid attachment, because attachment is the cause of suffering, don't worry about attachment. Look at the cause of attachment. Deal with that and you will have dealt with attachment. Once you have dealt with attachment, you have now dealt with the cause of suffering, and therefore suffering has been dealt with. Question, madam? So what the lady is saying is, these flowers are good looking, they're lovely, they're beautiful, but I don't want it. So she's saying, don't worry, when you look the other way, she's not going to pick them up and run away with them. We may not want to materially take possession of these things, but we want to see them. The sight of them is pleasing. How do flowers become beautiful? Are flowers naturally beautiful? No, because beauty is not natural. Beauty is artificial. So how did beauty come into our world? Before beauty was what? Beast. Have you all watched Beauty and the Beast? Yes, this is the Dhamma. The Buddha taught about Beauty and the Beast 2,500 years ago. It just took them a while to shoot the movie. So first there was beast, and that beast was vexation. See, because the mind believes that sights can bring it pleasure, this is wrong view. Okay? Sights can never bring pleasure, because sights are anicca, void of pleasure. That is another interpretation of anicca. Void of pleasure, or other words, unpleasurable, void of pleasure. Because sights are void of pleasure, they can never bring us pleasure. Can this ever, if you are thirsty, how can this help you? Can it? No, why is that? Because it's not water. There's nothing about this that can quench your thirst. Right? So for someone who's thirsty, what is the point of this? If you're stuck in the middle of a desert, what would you rather have? A kilo of gold or a kilo of water? Kilo of water. So for someone who's vexing, in the belief that sights are pleasurable, they're constantly looking for sights. The reason that you open your eyes is because you want to see. Just imagine if you went blind all of a sudden, how would that make you feel? I mean, why is putting people into dark rooms a punishment? Right? That's because people want to see things. Would you be okay without your glasses, madam? No. And that's not simply for survival. There are things you would want to see. I still want to see things. So if my eyesight started to weaken, then I'd probably wear glasses myself, because there are still things I want to see. Because I still see pleasure in this world. I see beauty in this world. If you ask me, this is what I said. I see this. This is beautiful, yes. But that is because the mind wants to see sights, assuming that sights are pleasurable. When the mind takes on this wrong view, this wrong belief, this misbelief that sights are beautiful, sights are pleasurable, now the mind goes into a state of vexation. Because you want something, but you don't have it. Let me try and explain it to you as best I can without making use of the screen. When the mind wants something, the mind goes into a state of expectation or vexation. This is the pelima. It's like when you're waiting for something to arrive, right? You've ordered something, you're waiting for it to arrive. Do you know, you've all experienced that feeling, right? Or you're waiting for an appointment, you're waiting for the bus, you're waiting for the train, you're waiting for an arrival, you're waiting for the postman. This is where the mind wants something, but what you want hasn't happened yet. So this state the mind experiences with every thought that arises and passes away. When the mind takes on a view that sights are sources of pleasure, sounds are sources of pleasure, smells, tastes and touch are sources of pleasure, now the mind is constantly awaiting sights, sounds, smells, taste and touch to come its way. So this is going back some sermons that we talked about some time ago, but it's good as a refresher. Sight, sound, smells and taste and touch can only come from the outside world. This is why we have our organs, our sense organs. Our eyes bring us sights, ears bring us sounds, and so on and so forth. Right? So we're all on board with that. Sense inputs, sense impressions. These sense impressions come into our mind, and they come into the mind at a point where the mind is waiting for their arrival. It's like waiting at the arrival's gate, and flights just landed. A friend comes through the arrival's gate. So of course, how does that make us feel? Elated. We feel really happy to see a friend, because it's a friend who we've been waiting to see. Have you never had visitors at home and where you thought to yourself, oh, why did they have to come at this time? Has that never happened? Or a phone call, why did they have to ring me at this time? That's happened plenty of times. Or sometimes perhaps when you're at work, you're just about to leave, it's 5 or 4:55 and the boss comes and says, I need this report done before you leave. Why did you have to come at this time? So when you see, what I'm trying to explain to you, show you here is, sense impressions are not sources of pleasure or sources of pain. Because the same friend arriving in different set of circumstances bring you pleasure. But the friend arriving when you weren't expecting them, when you didn't want them to arrive, that was painful. That was unpleasurable. The same person. Let's say you're at home, madam, and your son, he draws a picture. Brings it to you and say, Ami, look, I've drawn a picture. Oh, let's have a look at it, Putta. Beautiful, beautiful, excellent piece of work. When are you going to do the next one? I'll bring it to you as soon as I'm done with it. Good, Putta. And he goes away. He goes off to draw his next picture. Then you think, I want to watch some TV. You switch on the TV and now you start watching TV. Right? Really lovely teledrama comes on screen. Now you're watching that and you don't want to be interrupted. Uh-oh. But your son doesn't know this. Your son was asked to bring the picture as soon as he draws the next one. So now what's he going to do? He's going to bring the next picture. Now, how are you going to react to this situation? The same way you reacted the last time? No, it's going to be different this time. This time round, you don't want to be interrupted. Make a sentence with the word want in it. I want to be uninterrupted. Last time round, you wanted to see your son's picture. You wanted it and you got it. Therefore, you experienced joy. This time round, you want uninterruption, not interruption. You want to be uninterrupted. So if your son comes in, let's say your son comes into the room and he's very mindful. He knows about Ammi, right? He knows what Ammi is like. So you see him from the corner of his eye and you're thinking, what's he going to do now? He knows I'm watching the teledrama. You better not interrupt me right now, otherwise you're not going to get dinner tonight. Right? So you're watching TV. So the son comes in, he's very thoughtful, he's very considerate. He thinks Ammi is watching TV, I shouldn't interrupt her now. He turns around and walks away. How do you feel now? Oh, come here, Putta. Right? You feel so happy about the way he conducted himself. But he didn't show you the picture. He didn't show you the picture. Because it's not the picture that's going to make you happy now. It's him not interrupting you that's going to make you happy now, because that's what you wanted. Last time round, it's his picture that was going to make you happy. So last time round, if you were waiting, or let's say you weren't watching teledrama, you were just sitting waiting for your son to bring the picture. He said he would be with you in an hour's time. It's now 1.5 hours. It's 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, and he still hasn't arrived. And you go back into the bedroom to see how come he hasn't turned up, and he's fast asleep with his head on the desk. Now how are you going to feel? He promised you that he'd be with you in an hour's time with a new picture, but he hasn't turned up. He's fast asleep. That's not going to be a source of pleasure for you. See, doesn't that prove to us that we only experience pleasure, we only experience joy when we want something? So we were talking about the flowers then. Beauty is something we experience when a sight comes into the mind at a moment when the mind was expecting to see it. The mind likes to see beautiful flowers. It may not be that right now you weren't expecting to see these flowers, but the desire to see beautiful things is always there in the mind. Other things surface. So for instance, while you're having your dinner, you might not want to see beautiful flowers. That may be the case. But it's not that the wanting to see beautiful flowers has completely been eradicated. It's just suppressed. Something else has surfaced. It's like the keys on your piano. Right? The other keys are there. When you suppress one key, the other keys are still there. It's not that someone's removed all the other keys. They're all still there. What's happened is one of the keys is now more prominent than the others. This is why you hear it. Likewise, the way the mind works is there are lots of things that the mind wants, lots of things that the mind desires. But one thing will always surface. And it's that thing or the arrival of that thing which is going to bring you pleasure at that moment in time. So how come then, when you walked into this room, you weren't expecting to see flowers, and you saw flowers, how did that make you happy? Well, this is how it happened. The moment you saw flowers, it triggered in your mind the reaction. This happens in the trillionth of a second. The moment you see flowers, your mind identifies, right, I'm seeing flowers. First the mind says, I'm seeing something. Then the mind knows, I'm looking at flowers. Then what happens is, your mind goes into your memory banks and brings back memories of what are some flowers that I like to look at. What sort of flowers do I like to look at? What colors of flowers do I like to look at? What shapes do I like to look at? All these things that you would want to see surface. Now the mind is expecting to see a certain type of flower. It may not be that the mind only wants to see roses. I mean, you don't see any roses here. But there's a set of flowers that the mind finds pleasurable. But if I ask you, would you rather me replace this with something else? Some of you will say, oh yes. So I'm going to say, perhaps it would be better to have lilies than these. Others might say, no, Swami, this is perfect. But one is always going to top the other. So, this is why, for instance, if we were to present, so in a flower exhibition, if you go into an exhibition and lots of flowers are laid out, if I ask you which one looks prettiest, of course you're going to be able to point your finger and say, I think that one. That's the loveliest bunch of flowers I can see right now. Okay, we take that, remove everything else, and we put that back into a set of other flowers. And then I ask you, which one do you think is lovely now? So let's say before it was, there were roses, there were lilies, and there were daffodils. Okay? You said roses look lovelier than the other two. So we take roses, remove lilies and daffodils. Now we put roses in between sunflowers and tulips. Now I go, which one looks better now? Oh, now the tulips look better. Tulips are the lovelier because you can always choose. There's always going to be one that tops the other. This is why, when a guy goes out with a girl, right? In the class, he's always going to say, she's pretty, I like her. But take her and put her into a bunch of other girls, he's going to say, maybe the other one. Because it's always a comparison. And the reason for that is, remember, we always have what we like. There's an image of what we like in our mind. That's deep-seated. Deep down, deeply ingrained is what we have, the upadana. This is what we cling on to. These sets of upadana, they're all deep down inside in our mind, deep-seated. When we look at somebody or something, what we do is we examine the object or the person and we try to match all the attributes that we already like with the attributes of the person that we are seeing. The more matches there are, the more you find that person or that thing good looking and beautiful. It's like Tinder. Isn't there an app for Tinder or something? Where you can find a match. Dating apps. Right? You put your preferences and then the app suggests here's a good partner. How does the app suggest this? Based on your preferences. The more the preferences are a match, the app would assume that this is a better match. How does a Kapu Mahatya find a partner? So first he'll come and meet the family and say, right, what kind of girl would you like? She needs to be 5'2", right? She needs to be fair complexion, long hair, educated. She needs to have a degree. She needs to come from a good family. She needs to come from a wealthy family, and so on and so forth. You give you a set of requirements. Now what's the Kapu Mahatya going to do? He's going to go hunting. He's going to go looking for a suitable partner. He's going to come back with a set of responses. He's going to say, right, sir, you asked for your requirement set, of which I have found one who matches all your requirements. I have found two who match 3 of your 5 requirements. I have found another 3 who match 2 of your 5 requirements. Have a look at all of these and make your mind up. This is how the mind works also. The mind is also like a Kapu Mahatya. Whenever the mind sees something, what the mind does is, it checks against all of the attributes that the mind is already clinging on to, how many of those are a match with the object that I'm seeing right now. The more matches there are, the more the mind will say, that's beautiful. That's how beauty works. So really, when I said wanting is how we experience pleasure, yes, of course, you don't want to walk away with this. But you still want to see this. Because we want to see sights. We want to see things. There's a wanting to see. There's a wanting to smell. There's a wanting to taste. And there's this wanting to see, because seeing is pleasurable. Seeing is a source of pleasure. Sights are a source of pleasure. This is a wrong view. What sights would an Arahat like to look at? Nothing. An Arahat would not even see these as being beautiful. Because beauty is not in the flower. An Arahat does not see something that does not exist. So we see these flowers as being beautiful. That's because we want to see them. When the moment the mind wants to see something, the mind goes into a state of vexation. This is like a vacuum. And now it's waiting to be filled. When the sight comes in and fills that model, that's it, I was looking for this, thank you very much, found it. So that's that relief of vexation that happens in the mind, which is what we experience as beautiful. And sweet, or melodious, if it's to do with sounds. Or tasty, if it's to do with taste. Delicious. So through our five senses, what comes in from the outside world are simply sense impressions. None of them can bring pleasure, none of them can bring pain. Because the world is not designed to bring us pleasure or pain. It's neutral. The world is neutral. So these flowers are neither beautiful nor ugly, in real terms. In reality, these flowers are not beautiful, and nor are they ugly. But subjectively, this is why if I asked you all, put your hand up if you think these flowers are beautiful. Some of you will. Others will say, just look at them. So ugly. Look at those colors. They don't even match together. Whose idea was that after all? Some of you will feel that way. Does that not tell us that it's subjective and it's not objective? So beauty is not an attribute of the object. It's an attribute of the subject that is observing the object. So how is it that one that looks beautiful looks ugly to somebody else? It just depends on the frame of reference. It's a frame of reference thing. What is your frame of reference? Based on that, you would see something, you would perceive something as being beautiful or good looking, and something else as being ugly. See, some people like fair complexion, others like dark complexion, some like short hair, some like long hair. That's why people say, she's not my cup of tea, he's not my cup of tea. Right? People say like that. What they're saying is, that does not tick my box, doesn't float my boat. Right? You've heard all these expressions. What they're saying is, I already have an image of what beauty looks like. I already have an image of what pleasure looks like, or pleasure sounds like. I have an image of what pleasure tastes like, what pleasure sounds like, what pleasure feels like. If it doesn't tick many boxes, then you're going to say, that's ugly, that's not pretty. If it ticks a lot of boxes, you're going to say, that's pretty. But these boxes are essentially, ultimately, things that you want, because you want to see them. You want to hear them. You want to smell them. You want to taste them. That's where wanting comes into the picture. The mind has an impression of what beauty and beast is. In other words, in real terms, actually, the mind has a picture of what beauty is. What doesn't match with that is beast. What matches with it is beauty. That is what upadana is, clinging. Clinging on to the five aggregates. So what the mind can only cling on to rupa, vedana, sanya, sankara, vijnana. It can't cling on to anything else. And with the arising and the passing away of the mind, of the chittas, with every thought moment, if the mind is attached to something, the moment it passes away, now it hasn't got what it wants. It goes from wanting but not having. And then that's the state of suffering. And then it works to relieve itself from suffering, which is the abhisankara. Having relieved itself from suffering, now it experiences pleasure. That pleasure never came from the outside. That's why I said, bring it back home. Bring it back home. Always bring it back home. So when you experience pleasure, so for instance, if you see these flowers as being beautiful, you got something to do right now then. You need to bring it back home. As in, not take this back home with you. Bringing it back home is, in your mind, visualize how is it that you saw these as being beautiful. Link it back to wanting. Not wanting as in wanting to take this away with you. Wanting, I mean, even if you didn't take the physical object away with you, would you not take a mental object away with you? Right? Even as you leave this room, perhaps some of you might be thinking on the way back, those flowers, they were really lovely. I wonder how they did the color coordination. Or, sometimes do you not walk into a room, bunch of people, right? And you see like a party or a wedding or a birthday party, right? And someone comes dressed in lovely colors, clothes, right? Nicely dressed. Even after you leave the function, do you not talk on the way back home with those in your car? That's so-and-so. She looked such a darling, didn't she? That color match, she just gorgeous, wasn't she? So you haven't taken the person home with you. You've taken a mental impression of her with you, him or her. Because what you've done is you compared your mental image with what came through your eyes. And you started ticking the boxes. This is Kappa Mahatya. Ticking the boxes. And if you were able to tick as many boxes as you possibly could, then you say, beautiful. That's how eventually you ended up living with that person. Because you did the Kappa Mahatya job before you actually asked the Kappa Mahatya to come and find you a partner. You already had an image of someone you like in your mind. And as a matter of fact, I learned when I used to study a little bit of psychology back when I was at uni, that as children grow up, they, of course, as a young child, you get to see your parents, your mother, your sister, your grandmother, and so on. These are the women that come into your life. Apparently, a young child's mind observes the attributes of their mother, and when they look for a partner later on in their life, what they see as beauty, perceives as beauty, is mostly those attributes of their mother. So if the mother had long hair, then generally the child would go looking for a partner who has long hair. That's how this is all drushti. That's not to say that the child was sexually attracted to the mother or anything like that, but this is all drushti, because this is what the child sees, perceives. This is the drushti that comes into their mind. This is what good looks like. Right? So this is all drushti. This is why, a young boy, if you give the boy toys, it could be a bat, or it could be toy figures, right? Superman figures, Batman figures, and things like that. The child grows up liking those kind of toys. If you give a young boy, a young toddler, a Barbie doll, then the boy is going to like dolls. It's all based on drushti, nothing else. So if you bring up a young baby boy in a pink room, and you ask this child, what is your favorite color? He's going to say it's pink. Whereas if you bring a young baby girl in a blue environment, then you ask the child, what color is your favorite color? She's going to say it's blue. It's all based on drushti. But it's good that it's based on drushti. Because what that means is, once you have cleansed your drushti, once you've cleansed your view, now there is no longer a reason to attach. When there's no reason to attach, there's no reason for suffering. Which is what this second equation is all about. We would never attach to something if we knew about its true sense, of its truest form. If we knew something was anicca, we would never attach ourselves to it. That's why none of you like a cancer, because a cancer brings suffering. None of you like a cold or a temperature, because you know that it brings you suffering. You don't like that. None of you likes, your mother to die, for instance, because you know that's going to bring you suffering. So for something that's going to bring suffering, you're never going to attach yourself to. But that didn't stop you from attaching yourself to your mother. You're not attached to your mother dying, but you're attached to your mother. That's where the problem is. You attached yourself to something that would eventually bring you suffering. Because one day you're going to say, mother's died, mother's dead, and you're going to start crying. So what should we have on our placard? I want my mother to be alive. Isn't that the noble truth of suffering? I want my mother to be alive. For as long as you want your mother to be alive, you'll always suffer. Every day you leave home, right? Or let's say, remember if you were around when when we had the not very long ago, when we had the terrorist problems, right? Where there were the Easter attacks, right? Were you not worried, scared about sending your children to school or tuition classes or going out shopping, right? Everyone was in a state of anxiousness. Didn't know what was happening, what might happen, what could happen, right? So why were you worried about sending your children to school at that time? Because anything could have happened. What do you mean by anything? A bomb could go off and they'd be dead. So what's the problem? I want my children to be alive. That's the problem. But only a noble mindset can understand it when I talk about this in this way. Because otherwise, any ordinary person would say, what? You want your son to be alive? That's a problem. They'd think I'm mad. I mean, who wouldn't want their child to be alive, right? That's because they haven't seen the noble truth of suffering. We're talking about the ignoble truth of suffering. The anarya dukkha. That's why people say death is suffering. Mother died. What's the noble truth of suffering? What's ignoble suffering? Mother died. Death is what? Ignoble truth of suffering. Noble truth of suffering, mother. Why? My mother. The moment she became my mother, I planted the seed of suffering. It was only a matter of time before she died. She died. And that's the viparinama dukkha. But what about the dukkha dukkha? When she's alive, do we not have that? It's always there. Always there. The moment you attach yourself to something, dukkha dukkha bites you on the back. Instantly. Instantly. You walk into your garden, right? And you see all the flowers in bloom. The sun's out, right? And the flowers have started to bloom, right? And you look at them and you go, oh, beautiful garden. Are you not in constant worry and fear from that point forward? Or you see children playing in the garden next door and they're playing ball, right? And your garden is in bloom now. And you see the ball flying up in the sky and it's moving too close for comfort to the fence. How are you starting to feel right now? You know the feeling, right? You're starting to worry now. Well, nothing's happened. Why worry? Nothing's happened yet. The ball didn't come to your garden yet. But are you not living in fear and worry? Of course. This is dukkha dukkha. See, dukkha dukkha bites you on the back the moment you want something to be in a certain state. This is because the world is anicca. The flowers being in that state, your garden being in that state is not because you want it to be like that. It's because there are causes which give rise to that state. Cause and effect. In our inability or in our foolishness, in our ignorance to accept that everything that happens in the world is simply cause and effect, we dig our own graves. We dig our own graves. So all we need to do really is just realize, understand that the world is anicca. It appears as anicca. We just need to come to terms with how it really is. That's all it is. When the iron is hot, you just need to know that the iron is hot. Once you know it, you would never touch it. You'd never touch it if you knew it's hot. The only reason you touch it is because you don't know it's hot. So the Buddha comes into this world to say, the iron is hot. He doesn't say, don't touch it. That's what I want you to understand. He doesn't say, don't attach. He says, if you want to attach, attach. But listen to what I have to say. The iron is hot. Now do as you like. Because when you know that the iron is hot, would you touch it? No. So once I've explained to you and proven to you that the iron is hot, do I then also need to ask you not to touch it? Do I also have to ask you to do that? Don't touch it. It's hot, by the way, and don't touch it. If you have at least a brain cell, just one brain cell, is that not enough for you to understand that if the iron is hot, I mustn't be touching it? See, the Buddha does not come into this world to teach the Dhamma to fools. He comes into this world to teach the Dhamma to intelligent people. That's why after he said the world is anicca, he didn't say, don't attach. He didn't say that. He said, hey, listen to what I have to say. This world, anicca. In other words, the iron is hot. Now do as you like. Because if he also has to say, it's hot, and by the way, don't touch it, then he's talking to fools. The Buddha didn't come into this world to preach the Dhamma to fools. In his own words, he says, I come into this world to teach the Dhamma to wise people, not to fools. Nayan Dhammo duppanyasa. I do not teach the Dhamma to fools. My Dhamma is for the wise people, intelligent people. People who are willing to contemplate, reflect, analyze. Guru Hamdul recently mentioned, didn't he? He said, don't criticize, analyze. Important message. Really important message. Because, again, this is the poor man's philosophy and the rich man's philosophy. Poor people always criticize. Again, who goes protesting? Poor people. Who goes asking for their rights? Poor people. Who goes asking for a pay rise? Poor people. Rich people never go protesting. When I talk about rich people, just think of successful people. Unsuccessful people always go asking for things. Can I have this? Can I have that? Can I have the other? Why haven't you done this for me? That's the unsuccessful mindset, or the mindset of an unsuccessful person. The mindset of a successful person is always, what can I do to become better, to be deserving of this? It's always the poor people who always complain about the minimum wage. I don't know if in this country they have a minimum wage, but in some Western countries you have a minimum wage, right? So when I left the UK, it was I think £6.75 or something like that. £6.75. I think that was the minimum wage, right? People with a poor mindset, they'll always protest about the minimum wage. They'll say, keep raising the minimum wage, this is so unfair. But someone who has a rich man's mindset will always think to himself, why do I complain about the minimum wage? Why don't I just improve myself? Pick up more skills, become better, learn a few more talents, or pick up some knowledge, read a book, go to a class, take up a skill. Then you don't have to be on the minimum wage. In any company, right? There'll be someone who earns the minimum wage or the lowest wage that they pay at the company, and then there'll be someone in the company who earns the highest remuneration package. And there'll be people in between. Right? For someone who says, I only get paid 15,000 rupees. Oh, how sad. And he keeps complaining about that. Why don't they put up the pay? Why do they always pay me 15,000 rupees? Well, the question we got to ask that man is, hang on. There are people in your company who get paid 150,000 rupees. How come? They didn't get the job the day they came into this world. They worked on themselves. They worked on improving themselves. They picked up skills. They took up lessons. They went to classes. They went on courses. They improved themselves. That's how they also went from 15,000 to 150,000. Why are you complaining about 15,000? Improve yourself. Work on yourself. Again, don't stop Don't point the finger outwards, point the finger inwards. Of course, you can complain about the minimum pay if your plan is to stay on minimum wage forever. Then yeah, complain about it. But what a sad way to live. The same principles apply to Nibbana. That's why I say, don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for less challenges. Wish for more wisdom. That's what you need to work on. Work on yourself. If you have companies, if you are company managers, right? Instill these philosophies in your employees. It'll do wonders. Teach this to your children. Demanding is such a poor habit. It's a poor man's habit to demand. It's sad. It's pathetic to demand something. I want this, I want that. Why don't you give me this? Why don't you give me that? How sad. How about you become someone who never has to demand again? How's that for size? I know one family, the wife one day, she had to go ask her husband for some money. Right? She asked the husband, can I please have, let's say, $20 for something? So she didn't have her own account or anything. She was entirely dependent on her husband's income. Right? So this is a true story. This was the day that the wife's life changed entirely. Reason. When the wife had asked the husband, can I have $20? Apparently he asked a question. And the question was, why do you need it? She had asked for a small amount of money and the husband had asked her, why do you need it? It had made her feel so small. She had determined to herself, never, ever will I bring myself to the situation where I have to beg at someone's feet ever again. I will become more. I will become better. I will become successful so that I don't have to go keep demanding from people and asking and begging at people's feet. I'm not saying that her feeling small was a good thing, because again, that's klesha. Right? That was mana or moha, ego. That was ego. Right? So from a Nibbanic point of view, that is not right. However, it's that mentality that I'm trying to prove, that I'm trying to showcase to you. It's that mentality that we need in our quest for Nibbana also. Never wish for things to be easier for you. You need to become better. There'll be children among you who say, teacher, the homework is too hard. Please can you give us easier homework? Wrong mentality. That's not what you should ask for. Don't ask for the exam to be easier. Wrong mentality. You become better. Don't ask for less work. How about you become better so that you can manage your time better? That's the way to do it. So, you've seen some videos that we produce, and these are our young monks who work on these videos and they produce them. So sometimes when tasked with a project, so we teach them how to manage projects, right? And oftentimes you can find that they'll come back and they'll ask for more time. Can I have more time? Can I have more time? And then I said, no. That's not the way to do it. Time box it. You can't have... Do we have all the time in the world? No. We all have an expiry date. We just don't know what that date is. It's wrong to give children the impression that they can take up all the time you need to do something. Don't teach them. Don't put them into that habit. Don't teach them that they can have all the money they want. All the time, all the money. It doesn't work like that. Resources are finite. Resources are not infinite. Time is limited, money is limited, all resources are limited. Because if you make one of those resources infinite, now what's the reason for you to improve yourself? Why would you develop? That's how we should teach our children. So, at our monastery, when we do decorations, right, for various events, when he comes and says, Swaminasa, can we get some of these things from the shop? Can we get some of those things? He'll only ask when there's an absolute need for it. But oftentimes we'll sit together and we'll discuss and we'll ask ourselves, how can we use the things that we have to be creative? Because when you are limited, that's when creativity starts flowing. When time is limited, money is limited, and other resources are limited, now you become creative. Because all the other gates are shut. There's only one gate that's left open, and that is to become creative. Right, so apply the same principles to Nibbana. This is what the Buddha did when he laid out the 227 rules of conduct. He said, monks, if you're vexing, well, I have shut all the gates for you to relieve yourself of vexation. The only thing you can do now is to eradicate vexation. Off you go. I never feel that when the Buddha laid out his rules of conduct, he did that to suppress the monks. He did that as a blessing. He forced us to attain Nibbana. Wow. What a great teacher. So if a monk, a high ordained monk, wishes to be with a female person, you can't do that. Because monks have to be celibate. Because there's a rule of conduct. If you so much as come into physical contact with a female person, then there are offense. This is an offense which requires a lot of work to cleanse yourself. And if you also then get into communion with a woman, then it's a parajika. It's an offense that is so serious that you get expelled from the Sangha. So there are such things. So my point being, what the Buddha did was he closed all the other gates by laying out these rules. You want to be a woman? Well, you can't. Before he laid out these rules, he only laid out these rules when the need came for it. So on one occasion, before he started laying out these rules, right, there were some monks who had wanted to be, to be with a woman. So they had gone looking for that, and they had that such an experience, and the Buddha got to learn about it, and then the Buddha said, right, from now on, you want it, right? You can't have it. You want to be with a woman? You can't. So he laid out a rule. So what he's saying is, if you want it, no, that's the problem. Not you can't have it. You want it is the problem. So the only thing you can do now is treat the wanting. This is why for someone who ordains in the ministry, you get the extra support. As a layperson, when there are things you want, it's so simple to go and get them. If you want to eat something, you can go and get it. If you want to see something, you can go and see it. If you want to be the woman, you can be the woman. This is why when you ordain in the ministry, the Buddha gives you this, he gives you an extra support. He puts a fence around you. This is to protect you. In other words, he says, my dear child, there's only one way you can now treat your problem, and that is by eradicating attachment. Because all the other gates are shut. I wish the Buddha laid out more rules. I wish it was 722 rather than 227. I would have attained Nibbana sooner. We are talking about the infinitely compassionate one. It would be wrong for someone to judge, why did the Buddha constrain people? Why did he restrain? Why did he do like that? Why was he so harsh on his monks? He could have kept it a little bit more free. He could have given him a bit more freedom. No, how can we make judgments about the Buddha? This is the infinitely compassionate one. He came into this world to help me attain Nibbana. So everything he did was to help me attain Nibbana. It's the concept of the bullet in a gun, like Guru Handra mentioned in one of his sermons. When the gun is in a bullet, the bullet's in a gun, and there's only one way the bullet can exit the gun, and that's through the barrel. Because all the other gates are shut. It can't go left, it can't go right, it can't go back. It can only go forward, because all the other gates are shut. So if a monk is vexing, the only thing you can do is not relieve yourself of vexation. Eradicate vexation. And for that he gives us the Dhamma. So you have no choice. So if I'm vexing about something, I have no choice but to eradicate my vexation. Don't you think I'm fortunate? As a layperson, I could relieve myself of vexation and be okay with that. But now I'm not permitted to relieve myself of vexation. I can only do one thing, and that is to get rid of vexation. I have to rid my wanting. So in other words, what the Buddha is saying is, I have laid out rules for the Sangha so that they have to attain Nibbana. I shall force you, my child, to attain Nibbana. This is what he's saying. I shall force you to attain Nibbana. Whether you like it or not, you will attain Nibbana. After all, he's saying is, bring it home. Always bring the problem back home. This is what he's saying. Sachitta pariyodapana. Always look internally. Swachitta. Look at your mind. This is where you'll find the problem. Always. Etam buddhanusasana. That is my instruction. This is my shasana. To look internally and to rid the mind of all attachment. To rid the mind of all wanting. To cleanse the mind of all defilements. Always he's talking about the mind. Mind, your mind, your mind. Not never out there. Always the mind. Because he pinpointed the problem. With laser sharp precision, he said, this is where the problem is. It's never out there. It's always with us. See, now you know this. You don't need to go anywhere. You don't need to be with somebody. You don't need to do anything. You can just be by yourself and contemplate on the truth. And after all, as I've been saying, you don't need to rid your mind of attachment. That's hard to do. Attachment is the cause of suffering, yes. But don't try to rid the mind of attachment. Let attachment be. Let it be. Just see the world as it is. Attachment will look after itself. Attachment will look after itself. All you have to do is see the world as it is. In other words, if is this purple? This one? The purple? This purple, yeah? What the Buddha says is, if this is purple, then see it as purple. Don't see it as pink. Don't see this flower as a yellow flower, because it's not. Just see it as a purple flower. What if he had said, this is purple, yeah? Actually, see it as a yellow flower. See, that's not what he said. He's not come here to brainwash. He's not come into this world to get us to see something in the wrong way. He comes here to help us see things as they are. The way it is how he wants us to see it. And the way it is anicca. If you attach yourself to it, you shall suffer. That's all we need to see. Having seen that, you shall never attach. You don't have to do anything to not attach. It's automatic. The reason you attached also was because you saw something anicca as being nicca. That was also automatic. So attachment is automatic, detachment is also automatic. It's the step before that needs to be worked on. So really, it's ultimately just the drushti that needs to be worked on. The way you see the world, it's your perspective that needs to be worked on. Your philosophy, your attitudes. See, this is what I'm talking about. So stop pointing the finger out there. Don't wish it was easier. Wish you were better. Don't wish for less problems. Wish for more wisdom. All the problems out there, any problem that comes into your life is an opportunity for you to practice the path. It's an opportunity to practice the path. Why did we work on math problems? And when we learned math at school, what did we do at home? We took out the textbook, right? Or we even sometimes went out, got past papers, right? And worked through the problems. Because in working through the problems, what happened? Our skills improved. This is what we need to do with Nibbana. So let the problems come to you and then work through the problems. Once you work through the problems, when you have worked through the problems, you improve, you become better. So don't ask for the problem to be easier. So when you go for the hurdle race, and if the hurdle is too high, what do you say? Can you lower it, please? Is that what you say? No. You practice so that you can actually jump over. You keep practicing until you can jump over it. Or the obstacle race. You just keep practicing until you can jump over it. It would be foolish to ask, can you please lower the obstacle? It's too high. Can you please lower it? That's foolishness. Every problem is an opportunity. You may have heard this in your worldly life, in your workplaces, you may have heard of this. Every problem is an opportunity. But now, even in the sense of Nibbana, I want you to see it. The principles are always the same, folks. Whether you apply it in a worldly context or in a transcendental context, in a supramundane context. The principles are the same. We just need to work on ourselves. Every problem is an opportunity. Because if it's a problem today and that problem annoys you, yes, I've just found a problem that annoys me. That's how you should feel. In other words, I've just found a defilement in me. That's how you should feel. That's why I say, every morning you wake up, wish that someone might shout at you, wish that someone might insult you. Sometimes I do with our young monks at the monastery, right? They come, after a hard day's work, sometimes, they work in the monastery and they finally come in and sit down for meditation. Finally, we get 15 minutes I have for my meditation. The moment they sit down, right? Stand up, go. Don't meditate. I'm not going to allow you to meditate now. Why, Swaminath? Because you want to meditate now, right? Yes, that's why. Go. That is what they need to meditate on. They need to meditate on wanting to meditate. Isn't that a problem? I want to meditate. Isn't that a problem? Yes, that's a problem. I tell our anagarikas, we will only ordain you the day you don't want to be ordained. If you come to me and say, Swaminas, I want to be ordained, you're not ready for ordaining yet. Why? Because they still want to ordain. Come to me and say, Swaminas, if you want to ordain me, otherwise to hell with you, I don't care. Now you're ready to be ordained. Let's ordain you tomorrow. Because if someone wants to be ordained, right, isn't that the source of vexation? They want it. Aren't they suffering now? So while they're working in the monastery, say one of their toes get chopped off. Now, you can't ordain after that. Because again, the Buddha has laid out rules. You can't ordain someone who's lost any of their digits. So you can't ordain after that. Now, that's it. They'll never be able to attain Nibbana from that day forward because they'll constantly be thinking about that. Oh, I can't ordain now, I can't ordain now, I can't. Now they're just going to go mad after that. The frustration in their mind will be so intense that they'll completely forget Nibbana. So what our Anagarikas need to work on is really to develop their mind to such a state that they can come up to Guru Hamdra and say, Swaminatha, I no longer want to be ordained. If you want to ordain me, you may do so. If you don't want to ordain me, that's up to you. It's perfect the way it is. Because then they have learned to bring the problem home. That's where Nibbana is. It's not in the robe. You will not attain Nibbana any sooner by donning the robe if the way you look at the world doesn't change, if your perspective doesn't change, if your attitudes don't change, if your philosophy doesn't change. Because Nibbana is in the mind. It's already there with you. You don't need to invent Nibbana. It's already there with you. You just need to discover it. Remove all the layers of defilements and it's there. It's just waiting there to be plucked. The fruit of Nibbana is waiting for there to be plucked. The more defilements you remove, you'll start smelling it from afar. That sweet taste of freedom. The closer you get to that state, you'll be able to smell it, you'll be able to sense it. That bliss, that joy that comes with it. So I want you all to understand and accept and acknowledge that you can all do this. Some of the time when I talk to you in the sermons, what I do is actually I help you understand that Nibbana is something you can achieve. It's not a dream. It's not a trillion miles away. It's just around the corner. It's just the next bend. You can do it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Don't let anyone convince you otherwise. Walk away from them. It's people who have a defeatist mindset that say, oh, I couldn't, therefore you can't. That's so pathetic. I couldn't, so you can't. How sad. What they should be saying is, I couldn't because I didn't try hard enough. Not I couldn't, so you can't. No, you can. You all can. I know I can. Therefore, I shall vouch for it. If you work on it, you can do it. You can do it. Of course you can. Just need to work on it. Have belief, have faith in yourself. This is why I said last week, it's not me you should be praising. So I say, oh, Swaminatha, because of you. No, it's not because of me, it's because of you. How many people have I been preaching to now? I think we've been doing these sermons for about more than a year now, maybe a year and a half or so, at least 2 years or more than that actually. If you count the time from when we started doing sermons back in the UK, it's over 2 years, perhaps 2.5 years almost now. The people who used to listen to the sermons, they're not here anymore. Some people got on the bus and then they got off halfway through the journey. Not interested. So is it me that you need to be praising? I haven't changed. I've just been saying the same things. I haven't changed. You changed. Not me, you changed. You gave up your old ways. You gave up your defeatist mentality and you said to yourself one day, you affirmed to yourself, yes, I can do this. I'm going to do it. I'm going to go to every sermon. I'm going to sit there, stay awake, listen to the sermons, repeat the sermons, listen to them again and again, take my notes, reflect on them, do my 15 minutes. I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. I am going to do it. I can do it. See, you changed, not me. It's you that needs to be praised. You're the praiseworthy people here. You're the award winners, not me. You deserve the award. You're proof that this Dhamma works. Otherwise, why would you come here every Sunday? Have you not got anything better to do on Sunday? Seriously? Are your lives so sad? Have you not got any family? It's you that deserve praise, not me. Because you have been intelligent, you have taken on the Dhamma, you have embraced the Dhamma and enabled it to transform you. Because you weren't foolish enough to build those walls so high up that no one could penetrate them. That no Kalyana Mitra in this world can penetrate. by being stubborn. You weren't like that. You were willing to change. You were open-minded. You kept doing it until I get it. I'm going to keep going to the sermons until I get it. That is a rich man's philosophy. Until. I will keep doing it until I reap results. So keep doing it. Do you not truly, genuinely, do you not experience that you have come some way from where you started? Do you genuinely not experience that the fires of raga, dvesha and moha are starting to fade away in your hearts and in your minds? Are you genuinely not experiencing the bliss that comes from it? Of course you are. See, it's not me changing, that's you changing. So just keep doing it. Whatever you've been doing, just keep doing it. Because it's the right thing to do. And you can all do it. Okay. Let us all take a moment to transfer the merits that we have all acquired today. First and foremost, let us once again, as we did at the beginning, take a moment to reflect on the infinite virtues of the infinitely compassionate one, the perfect one, the omniscient one, the unparalleled one, the undefeated one, the supremely enlightened Gautama Samma Sambuddha. It is because of him that we have the gift of Dhamma today. It is because of him that we have the path to deliverance, the path to our salvation, and the path to liberation. Let us also at this point, let us take a moment to transfer merits to the Bhikkhu, Bhikkhunis, Upasaka, Upasikas, as well as all the members of the Mahasangha, including the Mahanayakas, the Anunayakas, as well as all the members of the Sangha resident throughout the world who have, since time immemorial, protected and preserved the Buddha's teaching and passed it down to us in the form of the Tripitaka, which today we have at our perusal so we can study, understand and comprehend. May they rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. And as we transfer merits to all the members of the Mahasangha, let us also not forget members of the Mahasangha, the monks and nuns who are resident in your local temples and in your local nunneries. Although you may have come here today to listen to the sermons and to make offerings to the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha, let us not for a moment forget that it is those monks and nuns who are local to you, who have always been by your side, through thick and thin, come rain or shine. It is they who have been in the tough times of your lives, as well as offering opportunities for your children to attend Dham Pasal, and to help transform you into good and great people in society. May they rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. May through the power of these merits, if any of them have today been born in the woeful planes, be able to redeem themselves and be born in the blissful planes. And may through the power of these merits, they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to the Devas, Brahmas, spirits, demons and the dead, all beings in these 10,000 world systems, wherever they might have been, wherever they may have come from. Anyone and everyone who might have been a mother, father, brother, sisters, uncle, aunt, nephews, nieces, grandparents, and so on and so forth, colleagues, co-workers, teachers, in whatever capacity someone might have come into your life at some point in samsara to help make you a better person, to help you out in difficult times, to help you recover yourself from the vicissitudes of life, in whatever shape, capacity or form they might have helped you, supported you, assisted you. It is now the opportunity for us to pass on the merits that we have all acquired. May they all rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. If any of them have today been born in the woeful planes, may they rejoice in these merits. May these merits help them to redeem themselves from those woeful planes and be born in the blissful planes. And may through the power of these merits they abstain from the unwholesome deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to all the members of the armed forces as well as the police force, who by dedicating their lives on many occasions protected and preserved the peace and harmony of our country, of our nation. It is thanks to them that today you and I are able to practice the path in peace and harmony, as well as those men and women who might have lost their lives in the battles, be they friend or foe. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today, as well as those men, women and children who might have lost their lives in natural disasters such as the tsunamis, earthquakes, landslides, sandstorms and so on and so forth, wherever they may be throughout this world system. Reflecting on the fact that at some point in samsara, each and every one of them will have been a mother to us, each and every one of them will have been a father to us. With compassionate thoughts in your heart and in your minds, let us transfer the merits to all of them. May they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. May through the power of these merits they abstain from unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Let us also take a moment to transfer merits to all those men and women, and as well as children who might have helped make this event a success, either by offering you transport, or perhaps by ushering you to a seat, or perhaps by offering you with refreshments either before or at the end of this sermon, or perhaps by making these sermons available to you, either for you to come and join them and listen into in person, or perhaps by listening in online, as well as transcribing these sermons so that they're more accessible to you in written media. In whatever capacity people might have contributed throughout the world, be that in passing on their blessings, or perhaps by offering their effort, or perhaps by making donations, in whatever capacity or strength they might have contributed, however small or large, may they all be able to rejoice in the merits that we have all acquired today. May through the power of these merits they abstain from the unmeritorious deeds, fulfill the meritorious deeds, fulfill the noble eightfold path, and attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may through the course of all the merits that we have all acquired today, throughout all the meritorious events that you will have taken part in through the course of today, in making offerings to the Buddha, Dhamma and the Sangha, in listening to this sermon, in preaching this sermon, in reflecting on Anicca, Dukkha, Anatta, as well as in transferring merits that you would have done just a moment ago, may through the power of all the merits that we have all acquired today, we be able to witness the advent of many hundreds of thousands of Arahatun Mahanses in this blessed land and in our very lives itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. And finally, may through the merits that we have all acquired today, you and I, and everyone who has contributed to making this event a success, to be able to become one of those Arahatun Mahanses, one of those Arahat Mehinin Mahanses in this very life itself and in the era of the Gautama Supreme Buddha itself. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. The members of the Mahasangha will now transfer their blessings to you. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of desire. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of aversion. May I and all beings in all worlds be freed from the fires of delusion. May I and all beings in all worlds attain the supreme bliss of Nibbana. May the Noble Triple Gem be with you all forever. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu.